What's up, guys? It's Toad. I'm back with you. It is Saturday, February 22nd. We got a lot to cover here. I do have one college basketball play that goes in a little bit over an hour at noon. I've got 7 college basketball plays today, 2 NBA, and I'm skipping the NHL card, even though it is a big card. But a lot of times I just can't find the situations upon the return from the All-Star break, so we'll just skip it. Skipping the NHL like it's a vagina. 2-0 last night, so I'm on a 9-1 run now. 7-0, I think, in college basketball, and maybe 6-0, whatever it is. As my camera will not focus, so that's awesome. Gotta love that. It is refusing to do it. Yeah, there we go. So you can see me as I'm still wearing what I was in last night on, what was the name of that show? I don't even know. But thanks for anybody who was hanging out last night on Ass Butts stream last night, where we were both taking requests. He plays piano and sings, and I was playing ukulele and singing. I don't even remember the name of the show, though. You can find it somewhere. You find me on Twitter, Tower King Toad. I tweeted it out. But we're here to talk sports betting. My 2 wins last night. Pennsylvania, they were down double digits in the first half against Dartmouth, and then they completely turned it around in the second half. Had a huge second half. Won the game rather easily, really, with a massive second half. And then the Houston Rockets, they were winning basically the whole game, but they never really were able to get a margin. So I had it on during the stream that I was on last night, but I didn't really see what happened at the end. But they were up 3-4 points with a couple minutes left. I'm like, all right, if they can hang on to the lead, we'll get some free throws at the end here. They should be able to do this, and they did, although it was close. Sports books, I think, probably not happy with the outcomes last night. I mean, I just play the situations. I mentioned that I liked the situation I liked the situation for the Detroit Pistons last night as well, and they won, and Golden State won as well. All those 3 teams seem to be getting a lot of the action at sports books. The Rockets, which I was on, Detroit, which I agreed with, and the Warriors, which I didn't really have much of a read on that one. So the books did not do well there. I mean, that was a popular 3-team parlay. Let's keep going, man. We're hot right now. Up on the year. I'm probably going to wind up being up on the month of February after all this, unless we really fall down, which better not happen. We better just keep going and have some more goodness here, man, because this has been good recently. Close to being at another new peak for myself over the last few years. During the last few years, being at the highest point that I've been over at any point during that span. Hopefully that happens. Unfortunately, because last year was so bad, that peak right now is somewhere during last year, earlier in the year. So let's go to today, man. We'll get right into it. We're gonna talk about all this stuff. I'm gonna try to not belabor this too much, although I always say that, but there's so much college basketball to talk about. I am going to talk about all the ranked versus ranked matchups and probably most of the games with ranked teams at the very least. Tennessee, Texas A&M is the big ESPN game that's up first at noon Eastern. Not going to be a game where I have a play, but number 6 and number 7, Tennessee, Texas A&M. I don't have a good read on this game. I mean, both of these teams play good defense, so I think that's kind of what you're going to see here. So my first thought about this was well, maybe it makes sense to kind of look to the under in this game. This total's up from 128.5 to 130.5. Juice to the over. We got 53% of tickets on the over, 59% of the cash on the under, though. So some money looks like it is now kind of taking the under at that higher total. And this is not a high total anyway. This is a low total. So expecting defense kind of slope ace, which is kind of what I believe both of these teams do. I forget what Texas A&M's pace is. Yeah, both these teams play slow. They're both very good defensively. They both can struggle offensively at times, so I would not disagree with the under in this game. The side is a little bit more difficult to figure out. A&M has flipped from a 1-point dog to a 2-point favorite with juice. 55% of tickets, 65% of the cash on A&M. Tennessee, if these websites would load, they're coming off a revenge win over Vandy, but it's not like they're going to come in and overlook this game against A&M. I mean, neither team's going to overlook this. This is a huge game for both teams. So Tennessee got that revenge win at home against Vandy. Didn't win by that much. Texas A&M, I mean, they've been on a roll right now as well. They've gotten themselves up into basically a 2 seed in some of these bracketologies, but I believe they just lost. Yeah, they lost pretty badly to Mississippi State. So situationally, maybe it kind of makes sense to have a little bit of a lean to the Texas A&M side, and the market read would agree with that, as I already pointed out. The money looks like it has come in and flipped the favorite on Texas A&M. I wouldn't disagree with that, but Tennessee is still the better team. But in this spot, yeah, I mean, I think the under would be the best way to look at this, but Texas A&M, if you forced me to lean on a side, that would be the lean, but that's not a play at all for me. Oregon is at Wisconsin. Wisconsin has vaulted up to number 11 in the country in the rankings. They're definitely a good team. I mean, I think KenPom has them right around there as well. They're coming off a couple of massive wins. I thought they were going to be in a letdown off of that huge win over Purdue, but the problem was Illinois, they were sick, man. They were Illinois. Get it? I didn't realize that they had this team illness going around. I think that really did affect their play to some extent. So Wisconsin's now really coming off 2 big wins, and now they get Oregon, which is a step down in class, really, because Oregon is not as good as those other 2 teams. But does that mean Wisconsin is going to be coming off these 2 games and kind of feeling a little bit too high and mighty, too plump and gay, too fat and sassy right now off of those big wins? Maybe, because pulled off the road upset against Purdue and then beating Illinois by 21 points. Pretty big. They're a big favorite in this one, too, because Oregon isn't really that good. Wisconsin no longer really plays that slow style that we're used to. They play a little bit faster, and they're very efficient offensively. They take good shots. Oregon's coming off a game at Iowa where they almost lost the game. Wasn't a great game for Oregon in that game, almost losing to this bad Iowa team. But Oregon isn't that good either. Maybe they're looking ahead to Wisconsin. It is a second straight road game for them, but because Oregon seems to have kind of found their balance again, and they're getting so many points in this game, my lean would be to taking the points of the Oregon in this game. Not a strong lean, but Wisconsin's sitting a 9-point favorite, which is definitely quite a few points. And I think maybe the line's a little bit inflated on Wisconsin just because of their recent play. They're definitely good. They're definitely the better team. But in this spot, I would look to go the other way. 69% of the tickets on them, 62% of the cash on Wisconsin. Let's see. We'll skip some of these games that are just big spreads that I really just don't really give a shit about, like this Louisville game. I just don't care. Florida State's awful. Cincinnati is going to be a play for me. I'm going to lay Cincinnati -7 here. And if you look at this game, this is on ESPN2. This is my noon play here. It's up to 7.5. It looks like right now. Is it? Let me see. Yeah, it's 7 down actually from 7.5 with juice to 7.5 with reduced juice. But it looks like TCU is a public underdog here with 60% of tickets and only 52% of the cash. So I don't know why this line has dropped a little bit. I was able to find a 7 out there. If you can do that, obviously do that, because as I always preach, the 7 is the key number in basketball because it's when you hit that 3-possession threshold and teams stop intentionally fouling. So that's the way that I would look to try to play this game. I mean, I don't know if I would be opposed to laying the 7.5 either. I like this spot for Cincinnati. And this, again, people are going to look at this and see, well, wait a minute. TCU has the better conference record. They have the same overall record, and I'm getting 7.5 points here. And based on how these teams have played recently, who in their right mind is going to lay points with this ugly Cincinnati team? Well, I'm pretty insane, so that would be me. I'm gonna do it. I'm going to lay the points with Cincinnati in this one. TCU, not only do I think they're maybe looking a little bit better than they actually are, and Cincinnati is actually the better team here, as the odds makers are telling you, they're coming off basically their win of the year, man. They beat Texas Tech at TCU. They were able to win against a highly ranked in-state rival against Texas Tech. That's a huge win for TCU, and they're not really going anywhere this year, man. So that win, that was like their win of the season, man. Huge win. They did have a win against Baylor earlier on the road, which was big. And by the way, they did pretty poorly in the next game and lost by double digits, so I will point that out as well. This Texas Tech game was also revenge as they lost on the road to them, so either way you look at it, I think you got to consider this to be their biggest win in the season. Huge upset win. I think they were like, what were they, 9-point dogs in this game? 7.5, I guess it was down to, but huge win for TCU. Now they're coming up to that, and they got to go to Cincinnati, which not really a familiar venue to them, having to go to Cincinnati as a member of the Big 12, which Cincinnati has not been in this conference for very long. So it's not really going to be a look ahead with West Virginia up next. So West Virginia is a slightly better team in Cincinnati. I guess not by much, but they're a team that definitely has more weight behind their name, and they just beat Cincinnati. So I don't think Cincinnati is really going to draw a whole lot of eyes here in this game. But Cincinnati, as I said, they are the better team. Ken Palm has them winning this game, I think, by somewhere around this, maybe even more. They're top 100 in both offense and defense. They're actually 22nd in defensive efficiency. They play really slow in the bottom third of the country, and they're in the bottom third in luck index, and they play the 45th strongest schedule. All of that according to Ken Palm, whereas even though TCU has faced a tough schedule, 24th in the country, they're 46th in luck, so they're really high in Ken Palm's luck index. So he's telling you Cincinnati is actually the better of these two teams. TCU is actually good defensively as well, but Cincinnati's even better, and they're significantly better offensively, which is really where TCU doesn't do a whole lot. Their offense is very bad, according to Ken Palmer, in the bottom half, really, at least, which is not good for a Big 12 team. He's got them down at 83rd in the country. Cincinnati, I mean, they've been kind of a bubble team. I think maybe their hopes are gone, but they're still kind of in that, like, maybe, like that picture where it's like, well, maybe if we get some big wins here, but they definitely can't afford losses either. And Cincinnati, they're coming off an ugly loss, I would say, to West Virginia. They were coming off playing Iowa State. It was a second straight road game, kind of a weird travel spot there. Coming back home, I think they're going to do a lot better. I mean, as is the case with most teams, they've been a bit better at home than on the road, that usually tends to be the case. But, yeah, I mean, Cincinnati, because they're coming off 2 losses in a row, that was kind of an ugly loss at West Virginia. And Cincinnati hit 2 threes in the final, 7 seconds, I think, of the game or something after they stole an inbound pass to lose by 3 and cover for their backers instead of losing by 9. I forget the guy's name. It was not Jizzle James, who has the most ridiculous name on Cincinnati. I forget the guy's name. One of their other players who only had 4 points in the entire game, hit 2 threes to get them to cover the spread right at the end. But either way, it wasn't a good performance out of Cincinnati in a game where I thought they were going to cover, and they did, but only because of that ridiculous crap at the end. But I think they're going to be back home. To me, it looks like it is a bounce-back spot for them and a major letdown spot for TCU. So for all those reasons, Cincinnati will be the play in that one up at noon Eastern. All right, let's keep going. I don't know. I'm going to skip some of these games. Some of these games I really don't want to talk about. And Charleston at Drexel, I'll just point out, this line looks way too easy to take Charleston, where you're basically just playing them to win the game, as the spread is 1.5. It's almost at a pick 'em, so I'd be wary of that and maybe not trust Charleston there. But there wasn't a whole lot as far as the situation was concerned. Furman is coming off beating Samford, so they're kind of in a letdown spot. And that was a huge win, beating Samford, which completed a season sweep of the team that maybe still is the best team in the SoCon and won it last year. And now they're facing VMI, but the problem is VMI actually beat them the first time at VMI, so this is actually revenge for Furman. But coming off the game against Samford, my lean would be to go against Furman and take whatever the points are there with VMI, but that's not a play for me. Let's see. West Virginia is at Texas Tech. Texas Tech, as we said, they're coming off that loss to TCU, ugly loss, but now they're coming back home. And last time they were at home on this floor, they didn't really do that well either, as Arizona State took them into overtime. So I think you're going to see a better effort out of Texas Tech here. The one issue I have with this is that they got Houston up in 2 days, which is going to be actually revenge for Houston, but that's a big game coming up in 2 days. So does that mean they're going to overlook West Virginia here? I guess it's possible, but coming off that ugly loss at TCU, they may actually come up and show, they may actually come into this game showing a little bit of focus here. And West Virginia's coming off that game where they beat Cincinnati, which there was a little bit of a geographic rivalry there between those two teams. It's not like West Virginia's going to not show up for a game against Texas Tech, but if Texas Tech does show up, they're the significantly better team. I think West Virginia's been kind of overrated all year. Texas Tech is down, though, from 11.5 to 11. 72% of tickets, only 60% of the cash. I would still probably lean to laying the points with Texas Tech in this one, although I don't love it, obviously. And the money seems to be going against it, but that is clearly not a game that I'm playing. Next up at 1 Eastern, SEC Network is my next play, and I'm going to take the points with Oklahoma. You know me in these games that look like they're like, why would you ever want to play this? It looks insane. Mississippi State's up from 1-4, and I actually have no clue why. I don't know if there are injuries on the Oklahoma side, but I'm just playing the spot here, and I think we're getting too many points on Oklahoma at this point, man. Ken Baum has this being like a 1-point game, so I think there is value in grabbing the points with Oklahoma here. 68% of tickets, 74% of the cash on Mississippi State, so the money, as it stands right now, is coming in on Mississippi State. They're ranked 21st in the country. Oklahoma's been awful recently, but I just don't understand why the money is coming that way. Mississippi State is coming off 3 big games in a row where they had a halftime lead against Florida. They went on the road and completed the season sweep against in-state rival Ole Miss as an underdog, which is a huge game. They came off of that, and then they just blasted Texas A&M. They're coming off that huge win against Texas A&M, and if that wasn't enough to make you look Oklahoma's way here, up 3 days from now, they got to play another top 10 team, Alabama. So this is a top 10 sandwich spot for Mississippi State, and with a rivalry win mixed in there the game before that. I think this is a terrible spot for Mississippi State, and they're having to go to Norman, Oklahoma, which is not a typical travel spot for an SEC team like this, where Oklahoma's new to the SEC, so it's a venue they're not going to be used to. I know Oklahoma really has struggled in conference. They've not been good. Whether it's been home or away, I understand they haven't been good either way, but I believe all of their conference wins have come on this floor at home. Is that right? Or did they win one on the road? I can't remember. Let me see. Oklahoma, what are we looking at here? They beat Vandy at home. They beat South Carolina. I mean, South Carolina, not good, but, and then what was their other conference win? They do have 3. I don't even see it. Where the hell is it? Oh, it was at Arkansas. So 2 of their 3 conference wins are at home. But they've hit a horrible stretch, man, where they've lost 5 straight games. But look at their opponents. On the road at Auburn, do you really expect them to win that game? No. At home against Tennessee, I mean, don't really expect them to win that, although they got blown out. On the road at Missouri, they got blown out again. I mean, Missouri, these are good teams that we're talking about here. Then I think the LSU game, maybe that was a sandwich spot. I don't know. I just don't understand that. But Oklahoma now returning back home, and that was their only home game, or no, 2 home games, in that stretch, Tennessee and LSU. But that game, I believe, was their only home game where they were a favorite against LSU. Lost that game, and that was the last time they were at home. Their last 2 home games they lost, and now they're returning home. That kind of tends to be a focus spot, man. When you get a team that is coming off a bad loss on the road, which they are. They lost at Florida, but I won't blame them for that loss either. Coming back home off of that and having lost their last 2 home games as well, and their last home game being an inexplicable loss to LSU, I think you're going to see focus out of Oklahoma here, man. And I don't know how we're getting 4 points here. Like I said, I don't know if there are injuries on the Oklahoma side. I still just like it because of the spot. I mean, Oklahoma, they're 50th in the country according to Ken Baum. They're still top 70 in both offense and defense. Their offense is better than their defense. They play a bit fast, which Mississippi State plays a similar tempo, I believe, so we're not going to really see much of a tempo disparity here. Mississippi State does play well on both sides of the ball, but Oklahoma can actually match them almost in offensive efficiency. Mississippi State is the better defense, but it's the better defense laying points on the road. So it's not a situation where you're getting points with the better defense. And Mississippi State, Ken Baum has them up at 69th in luck index, and he only has Oklahoma down at 129th. So he actually has Mississippi State slightly overperforming, and Oklahoma not overperforming as much as that. So for all those reasons, especially because this is a major sandwich spot, Oklahoma is going to be a play there. Even though Oklahoma, I have been caught playing them a couple of times, but Iowa State at Houston, number 8 and number 5, huge game. This is on ESPN at 2 p.m. Eastern. One of the biggest games, arguably the biggest game of the day, man. This is a huge game in the Big 12, big top 10 matchup, but Houston is a huge favorite here. And part of the reason why is because 2 of Iowa State's starters are out in this game, man. Iowa State, they just got Momcilovic, is that his name? Mama's boy, Momcelovich, whatever his name is. He's one of their best players, especially in the interior, and they just got him back and started playing better, but now 2 of Iowa State's better scorers are actually out in this game. I forget their names, but we can look it up right now. So that's why the line is where it is partially here. Let me see. They're missing, who are they missing in this game? It's not Momcilovic. It's Jones and Gilbert are both out for this game. One of them is out with an illness, and one of them is out with an injury. So they're both not playing, even though this is a huge game against Houston. So that has jacked the line up a little bit on Houston, up from 9 to 11.5. So that's the reason why the line is where it is. The line has moved a little bit, but it really hasn't moved that much based on those injuries. Iowa State is kind of a public underdog, though, in my opinion here. 53% of tickets, 55% of the cash on. So I would actually look to lay the points with Houston in this one if I was going to play it, but definitely would hesitate to do so because Iowa State may step up their game a little bit extra, even though they're going to step it up anyway for Houston. But because they have to try to counter those injuries that they have there, but they're going to be playing with a thin roster, that means, so they might get a little bit more tired. The other hesitation I would have is just laying huge points with Houston. You know, that kind of tends to be an iffy situation just because they play so slow and they play really well defensively. Makes it a little bit harder for them to cover large numbers sometimes, so a little bit tough to gauge on that one, but I do think that the public is kind of looking at this and saying, oh, this is a top 10 matchup between number 8 and number 5, and we're getting double digits here, and thinking that taking that double digits kind of looks tempting, but I would kind of hesitate to do so. Houston is definitely very good, although Ken Baum does have both these teams up in the top 10. But then on the other hand, Iowa State may be getting docked a little bit as far as what their perception is because Momcilovic was out for a few games in there, and that was kind of a bad stretch for Iowa State. But again, now they're missing 2 other guys in this game. So what can you really take away from that? I don't know. It's really hard to say. Going to be a big game, though. Longwood and UNC Asheville is going to be probably the biggest game in the Big South today. UNC Asheville sitting at second in the conference behind High Point, who is the best team in the conference. Asheville just got blasted by Radford on the road. Big win for Radford in that game. It was revenge for Radford as well. But now this game is going to be revenge for UNC Asheville, coming off an ugly performance. They actually lost to Longwood earlier in the season, and UNC Asheville only has 3 conference losses, and one was to High Point, which they did beat High Point in their other game they played against them. So that's not an unavenged loss, really, even though they did lose to High Point later in the season. They lost to Radford just now, even though they beat Radford before. So the only team I believe that they haven't beaten yet in this conference is this Longwood team. So that leads me to believe that UNC Asheville is going to show up in this game for those reasons. Longwood coming off a nice win over Gardner-Webb, which broke a long loss streak for them. And that wasn't a streak where they were playing good teams in every one of those games. I mean, they did have some of the bad teams sandwiched in between better teams, though, so maybe those were sandwich spots, and they did lose to High Point and Radford in there, who were decent teams. But UNC Asheville seems to make sense to me in this game based on the situation. Radford is, or not Radford. I would look to fade Radford today too, but hang on. Asheville is actually down from 3 to 2.5, but I would probably look to lay the points with them, even though the odds makers are actually telling you Longwood is actually the better team. But I believe, if I'm not mistaken, I believe Asheville also lost to get eliminated in the Big South tournament last year. Is that right? Let me see. Yeah, so they lost to Longwood, I believe, in the championship of the Big South tournament last year, and they still have not avenged that loss, and that was an ugly loss. So after that, the only time they played Longwood this year was they also lost, so it's kind of double revenge for Asheville. So I do think they should be extra motivated in that game. That would be my opinion. Scott, thank you, sir. Glad you enjoyed the stream, man. It was good seeing you in there last night. The uke playing gave you Longwood. That's good to hear, man. Hopefully everybody had a boner. Hopefully the women had lady boners. Charles, thanks for hanging out, man. Oh, thank you, sir. You guys are both in the chat. All right. We got, I don't get too many viewers on my stuff here, but the viewers that I do get, I definitely appreciate it, because you guys like seem to follow me everywhere, which is crazy. Will, thank you for showing up, man. I do appreciate it, man. It's like we don't have that many fans, so the ones we do have are like really rabid and loyal, and I don't know what is wrong with you guys mentally, but yeah, thank you guys. Rice is playing Tulsa here. This is a game where I almost wanted to play Tulsa. Rice is coming off, I mean, they've lost a bunch of games in a row, so they aren't a bad streak, but I would be looking to fade Rice in this game if I was going to play this. Not ricin, not a poison, but maybe want to avoid the poison that is Tulsa here. But Rice just came off a big game against UAB, man. I mean, UAB is one of the better teams in this conference. That was a big game. They lost by 1 point in a tough, close matchup. And up next, they got Memphis in a couple of days. and they already beat Tulsa on the road, I believe. Is that right? I thought I saw that. Yeah, they already beat Tulsa on the road by 6 points, so it's also road revenge. So they may very well overlook this Tulsa team. Maybe the hesitation I would have is that Rice has been losing a bunch of games, so they can't really afford to overlook anybody. Tulsa should be motivated in this game because they know they lost at home already to Rice, and they're coming off just getting punished basically by North Texas. North Texas is a team that will slow you down and in a lot of cases not allow you to score a whole lot. And Tulsa only got into the 40s in that game, so kind of an embarrassing performance. I know it is a second straight road game here, but if I was going to play this, the only way I would look to play it would be to take the points with Tulsa. It's down from 7-6 on Rice now. 60% of tickets, 90% of the cash coming in on the side of Rice. So it does look like they're getting, or on the side of Tulsa, excuse me. So it looks like Tulsa is getting the money there. I don't really know what else I have to say about that, but the lean would be to Tulsa in that game, and that's not a game that there's going to be a lot of public play in that game. So most of what we're seeing in the market there is going to be more professional, I would have to imagine. Wake Forest is coming off a pretty big win, man, over SMU, because that was a game that was not only did they have to win on the road there, which I think that may have been an upset win on the road for Wake Forest. Let me see, was it? But those two teams, yeah, it was a 6.5 point upset. Those two teams are kind of locked in a bet. And I think it went into overtime, too. Oh, no, it didn't. I thought it went into overtime. It didn't. It was an 11-point win, though, so somewhat unlikely that it did go into overtime. I don't know what I'm thinking, but that was a big win for Wake Forest, man, because that was a game where both of those teams are on, like, the tournament bubble right now. They're both trying to get these wins to stack their resume and try to get into the tournament. They're both right there on the bubble. Second straight road game now. They're having to go to NC State, who they already beat at home by almost 20 points, so they may not have full focus against NC State. They do have Virginia up next, which at least Virginia, I mean, they're not playing well this year, but they are a bigger name than NC State, so it is possible. And NC State's way down near the bottom of the conference, man, so it is possible Wake just does not take NC State seriously, even though usually Wake is the little brother in the state of North Carolina. But I think, yeah, in the state of North Carolina against NC State, but I think maybe the tables have turned a little bit, and NC State is going to be the team that's going to have more focus here. They are coming off a loss to North Carolina, which is a big rivalry game as well, but NC State is just nowhere near the caliber that North Carolina is, even though everybody's shitting on North Carolina this year. I still don't think it's totally determined that North Carolina is going to miss the tournament this year, to be honest. And North Carolina is better than you think they are, at the very least. So NC State is coming off a pretty ugly loss to them, though, even though it is a game that you get up for emotionally. They did not do well at Chapel Hill. Coming back home, which they did at least win at home, and that was their only win in the last who knows how long. Their only conference wins have all been at home. 3 conference wins all at home, so they've been a little bit better at home than on the road. So basically what I'm saying is I would look to fade Wake Forest or pass in this game. Wake Forest is up from 1 to 3.5 with juice, so for some reason the line has moved way up on Wake. I don't agree with that. I do agree with the percentages here. Wake Forest is public, 78% of tickets, only 51% of the cash. If I was going to play it, I would take the points with NC State in that one. Next up, we do have another play for me. I'm going back to the well and doing what I've done that hasn't worked out that well for me in some of these games, but I'm going to play Penn State again in this one. Penn State did cover for me against Oregon, I think, in one of the games I played them. And then more recently, I think I lost on a game playing them at some point, but I think this is a bad spot for Minnesota here. Penn State is at Minnesota. I mean, both of these teams not very good, but in my opinion, Penn State is actually the better team. Minnesota's up from 3 to 3 with juice, so that line is not totally giving Minnesota full court here, although the line is moving up on them, and I do not agree with this. 55% of tickets, 71% of the cash on them, but you got to look at what Minnesota's coming off of. I don't know why they have the cash percentage right now, because they just went on the road to the Pacific Coast to 2 unfamiliar venues for them, and they pulled off upsets in both games against USC as 7.5 point underdogs, because that's how bad Minnesota actually is. Then going out on the road, UCLA, they were somehow able to beat them as well as double-digit underdogs, and UCLA was winning this entire game, kind of blowing them out really for a lot of it. Minnesota couldn't even score in this game. Minnesota was losing the whole game, And then what happened? Minnesota just kind of crawled back into this game and were able to somehow win the game right near the end. And they won it in some weird, dramatic fashion. With, I think, what's his name? Garcia, is that his name? Yeah, Dawson Garcia or whatever, basically the only good player on Minnesota. He scored 32 points, season high for him, 27 in the second half. Just a ridiculous comeback from Minnesota to pull off this absurd upset over UCLA. I just don't see Minnesota having their A game coming off of that. Now, with travel back from the Pacific Coast, coming home, and they're facing Penn State, who, by the way, Minnesota, I believe, already beat them. Yeah, Penn State already lost at home to Minnesota earlier this year, so this is road revenge. Penn State was a 6.5 point favorite in this game, which, I mean, sure, maybe Penn State is not as good as we thought maybe they were back then, but that wasn't even that long ago. And if 6.5 was accurate, then 3 is definitely too high on Minnesota here. 3.5 too high as well, obviously. That would be a bit too much line movement, in my opinion. Like, I think it would make sense if this line was maybe somewhere in the 2 range here. I do think Penn State is the better team. And Penn State, I don't mind the spot that they're in. They just won against Nebraska, and I think that kind of gets that monkey off their back, man, because they had not won a game since this game against Rutgers way back. They've lost 7 games in a row, I believe. Finally got that game, and a lot of times when a team is mired in a bad losing streak like this and they finally get that win, then they get that confidence back and they start playing better. But you're not going to be overconfident, obviously, because all you got was 1 win. But that can kind of like propel you forward, and it kind of helps you, take your mind off of it. Like, we can't win anymore. Now that's no longer the mindset. The mindset is, okay, we know we still can win. Let's move forward. So I think that's kind of the mindset here when you break a huge loss streak like that. That's a momentum-breaking win, in my opinion, a new momentum starter. So for all those reasons, I like Penn State as well. Penn State also lost at UCLA by double digits. So people are going to see this, and if the public is coming in on this, they're only going to want to play Minnesota, I would have to imagine, because Minnesota has the slightly better record. Minnesota just beat UCLA on the road, and Penn State lost badly to them. Penn State has been awful recently. It's like, what have you done for me recently? Penn State is sitting at the very bottom of this conference, and I honestly don't even think they're the worst team in this conference. I think they're probably better than Washington. Ken Baum has them at 71st, which isn't that bad. Oh, and I said they're better than Minnesota. Yeah, Ken Baum has Minnesota down at 85th. So Ken Baum has Penn State 13 ranking spots higher. Penn State actually top 100 in both offense and defense. Minnesota is as well, but he actually has Penn State better on both sides of the ball than Minnesota is. Minnesota 70th in luck index, and Penn State way down to 345th in luck index. So he has Penn State as being one of the most underperforming teams, one of the bottom 20 in luck in the entire country, meaning they've underperformed dramatically, whereas Minnesota 70th is one of the top 70 teams as far as they've been overperforming. I guess the one caveat, I guess, here is that Penn State plays fast. They like to play fast, and Minnesota plays outrageously slow. So that's the one thing. This game is probably not going to be at a pace that Penn State wants to play. Minnesota will probably be able to slow this game down. So that's the one maybe issue that I kind of have with it, but everything else about the situation has me lining up on Penn State in this one. And at least what you can say is that you have the slowdown team laying points here. So it's tougher for the slowdown team to cover as a favorite, especially when I think they're laying points that are too high, where the number, in my opinion, is not justified. So I will take Penn State in that game. Wagner at Chicago State, I will point this out in the NEC. Wagner actually lost to Chicago State at home earlier, which is crazy. Chicago State is an awful team. I mean, they moved to the NEC. They were unaffiliated, and they finally got a conference. I don't know how they wound up in the Northeast Conference when they're in Chicago, Illinois. I'm pretty sure, because they're Chicago State. They have not done too well. Since conference play started, they at least have won games, where they hadn't done that beforehand. But so this conference is at least more their level of play, I guess. But they actually beat Wagner at Wagner earlier this year somewhere. Where is it? Yeah, Wagner lost badly, actually, by 12 at home to Chicago State. And now Wagner broke their 3-game loss streak that they just had. They lost to Long Island and Fairleigh Dickinson in there, and those are two of the better teams. in this conference, losing to Lemoyne, not very good. Lemoyne, not a very good team. They finally turned it around and beat Stonehill, my guys from Easton, Mass, Stonehill. Wagner finally got that win to kind of break that loss streak. Now it's road revenge for them, although they do have Long Island and Central Connecticut up to finish the season, and those are the two top teams in the conference. Central Connecticut, without a doubt, is the best team in the conference. But I do think Wagner will show up in this game because it is road revenge. Chicago State, really a bad team. Wagner is enough the better team that they're laying points on the road. They're actually an anti-public road favorite here as well, up from 1 to 2.5 with juice. The line getting a little away from you, but I mean, maybe laying the points, the 2.5 or whatever, still makes sense. Maybe a money line would make sense. But they are the side that I agree with in this game. 67% of tickets and only 62% of the cash on Chicago State. But the other thing that makes this good is that Chicago State just played Central Connecticut as an 11.5-point underdog at Chicago State. Chicago State played them fairly close. Chicago State was hanging around in this game, even though the game was kind of over before it was over. They didn't really go away in this game and only lost by 6. So a little added bonus there as they are coming off that big game as well where they played fairly well in the game. So that's what we got going on there. Towson is at Campbell. This game, fairly big game in the Colonial, really. Campbell has kind of moved their way up in this conference. Towson was the talk of the town, man, because they'd won like 14 games in a row or whatever it was. And I think they're overrated right now. I still think UNC Wilmington is the best team in this conference and not Towson. Towson finally lost at Elon, and that's the type of loss where when you haven't lost for so long, they hadn't lost since December, I don't think, at Charleston, I believe was the case. They'd won so many games in a row that when you have a long win streak like this, one of the longest maybe the longest this entire season in the entire country, and when that happens, you finally lose that win streak, it tends to not be a good spot in that next game, and it's a second straight road game, and Campbell is actually new to this conference, I believe, as well. So Towson may not be used to going to this venue, and I don't think they've played Campbell at all this year. And Campbell has kind of been moving up, so the spot doesn't look good to me for Towson. And they do have William and Mary up next, who, even though both these teams are kind of close in the conference standing, so maybe Towson can't really afford to overlook Campbell here in this game, but still, well, they do have a little bit of padding here, as they're 1.5 games up on UNC Wilmington. Campbell, William and Mary, I mean, Campbell's a little bit behind William and Mary there, so maybe the William and Mary game is going to have a little bit more of an effect there, maybe draw their focus a little bit more than this Campbell game will. And Campbell, what are they coming off of? Campbell just lost to NCA&T, which was on the road, a third straight road game. That is an ugly loss either way, though. NCA&T, the worst team in this conference, not a good loss there for Campbell. So they should be in a refocus spot here, in a bounce-back spot. Should be a focus spot with the team that's sitting atop the conference right now coming into their place. They got to face Towson, UNC Wilmington, and Charleston all in a row, though, which is not going to be easy to do. But in this game, the Campbell side makes sense to me in this game, but Towson has actually flipped from a 1.5-point dog to a 2-point favorite with juice, so it looks like some money's coming in on Towson. I don't agree with that move. I don't understand it, really. 77% of tickets, 82% of the cash on Towson. I would lean to taking the points with Campbell in that one, but I'm not going to do it. The Road Warriors with Wagner. Yeah, that's right. Wagner, even. Embarrassing loss to NCA&T. That's right. And I was able to get a win with Charleston over NCA&T last weekend. That was my first play on Saturday, which that one was a little bit close for comfort as well, but Charleston was able to still cover that number as a favorite. I don't know if there was anything else I was going to say. I will say, by the way, that because Ken Pom does have Penn State as the better team over on Minnesota, I think he has Penn State only losing that game by 1 point or maybe even winning the game. So I think there is definite line value to find there. All right, in the SoCon here, this is a pretty cool conference, man. East Tennessee State, they're one of the better teams in this conference, man, and they're kind of they're a little bit under the radar. They're playing Wofford. I mean, this is a fairly good game. They just had to play 2 big games against Chattanooga on the road where they covered for me barely. Getting within the half point there, and then they went out on the road, or they came back home, and beat UNC Greensboro. Now they're coming up those two big games. Now they're going to go on the road to face Wofford. However, they did lose to Wofford at home, so it is actually a road revenge spot for East Tennessee, even though they are coming off a big game. Could be a letdown spot for them. So this game, it's an interesting game, interesting handicap. Very difficult handicapper. I don't see that much of an advantage one way or the other. Wofford is coming off absolutely stomping VMI, which when you have a win like that, sometimes you get a little bit overconfident, but I kind of don't think they're going to overlook East Tennessee back at home because East Tennessee is ahead of them in the standings, even though they did already beat them on the road. My lead in that one would slightly be to Wofford. Wofford is up from 2 with juice to 3 with juice, so the money is agreeing with that. 81% of tickets, 99% of the cash. Not a play, though. Let's see. I do think Liberty looks like they could be in a fade spot here in the Conference USA here. They just beat UTEP. I mean, that's a big win. I think that was revenge as well. They beat UTEP. UTEP has kind of slid down in the standings a little bit. Liberty, as I've been saying, is probably the best team in this conference. Now they get FIU, Florida International at home, who's not a very good team. Liberty already beat them on the road. And not only did they beat them, but they embarrassed them on the road, beating them 82-59. They just smoked them on the road. And who do they have up next? Jacksonville State, Kennesaw State, and Middle Tennessee. And where are those guys? Oh, yeah, those are all 3 of the other top 4 teams with Liberty in the conference standings right now. So this is definitely a sandwich spot with FIU being the worst team in the entire conference. FIU is coming off an embarrassing loss to New Mexico State on the road. Kind of a weird travel spot for them, for FIU to have to go to New Mexico. They lost that game horribly by almost 30 points. It is a third straight road game, but they're coming back to the East Coast, at least for this game, or to the Eastern time zone, at least to Virginia. So, third straight road game gives me a little bit of hesitation. Liberty is certainly the way better team here, but my opinion would be you either take the points with FIU here or don't play it. Liberty down from 15.5 to 13, so some money is coming in on that side. I agree with it, but you've lost a little bit of line value on that now too because the line has dropped. 55% of tickets, 94% of the cash on FIU. Again, I agree with it. I think it's a bad spot for Liberty. Sometimes I just avoid these like double-digit spread games though. Ball State, this is an interesting situation, man. They're playing Buffalo, and they already won at Buffalo by 13 points. Now they're coming off losing a tough game at Toledo where they were 7.5-point underdogs, and they almost beat Toledo. So the spot doesn't look that great, and to compound it even further, they got Akron up next, which Akron is the best team in the MAC and still undefeated in the MAC. So this is basically a sandwich spot that Ball State is in, and it's road revenge for Buffalo. So I do like Buffalo in this game. It's just, I don't know if I want to put my money on a team that's as horrible as Buffalo is. Buffalo is coming off a terrible loss at home, losing to Western Michigan by 33 points. That is pretty horrific. But this Buffalo team, I mean, they are real bad. So I don't know if I would trust putting my money on them, but this spot is not good for Ball State. Ball State's up from 9 to 9.5 with juice, but 67% of tickets and only 61% of the cash. So again, Buffalo is, I believe, the right side in that game. Not a play for me, but that is the side that I would agree with. Ole Miss is at Vandy. This is a game pretty interesting in the SEC. Ole Miss just lost their rivalry game to Mississippi State, so maybe they're not in the best spot coming off of that. That broke a loss streak for them. That's a game, you get up emotionally for, even though, they didn't play that well in the game. But now they have to go out to Vandy. I believe they haven't played Vandy yet this season, right? And up after this, they got Auburn, man, in 4 days. So Auburn out on the horizon. It's possible that Ole Miss doesn't have the greatest game here. It looks a little bit sandwichy to me in this game, even though they didn't play that well against Mississippi State, and they were really getting hammered in this game, almost losing by 20 points down the stretch. So the thing is, if this was a close game, like a real battle, like right to the end, I would probably be on Vandy here. That would really make it a monster sandwich spot. But because that game wasn't that close, I'm going to stay off of it. But I do lean to the Vandy side in this one. And Vandy, they have some extra motivation here because they're one of the bubble teams as well. They need some wins to pad their tournament resume here. So this would be a big win for them against a ranked opponent. So they do kind of need this. They've lost 3 games in a row. But, I mean, they were to Auburn, and then on the road at Tennessee, where they played pretty well and only lost by 5. Big rivalry game. And then they lost at Kentucky. Are you really going to blame them for losing those 3 games? I mean, I'm not going to. So I think being back at home, they lost their last home game to Auburn. Didn't do that well in that game, but they won the previous couple of home games. Actually, the previous 3 home games they won against Texas, Kentucky, Tennessee. So those weren't against nobodies. And they won the one before that, too, against South Carolina. So they had won 4 home games in a row in the SEC prior to this one. So I think it makes sense. Vandy makes sense in this game to me. Not a play for me, but that is the lean. Vandy has flipped from a 1-point dog to a favorite kind of pick 'em with juice. Probably you're going to see -1s out there on Vandy for the most part. They do have 68% of the tickets, though, with 57% of the cash coming in on Ole Miss. Don't understand that, but I would agree with the Vandy side there, and I think they need the game a little bit more for their resume. Yeah, Auburn, I mean, that is definitely a huge look-ahead spot. But Vandy's been playing decently enough that, I mean, I don't know. Obviously depends on the situation, whether or not you're going to overlook that team. Georgia is at Auburn. I mean, Georgia has really kind of fallen down. Georgia, they're still a bubble team, but I think they're on the outside right now looking in. They need some wins. Auburn does have that game against Ole Miss up next, like I said, and then Kentucky, Texas A&M, Alabama. So they have all ranked teams left to finish the season here, but they are coming off a game where they didn't play very well against Arkansas. And that, I believe, was because they had a huge win against Alabama the game before that. Massive win over Alabama. So I considered taking the points with Arkansas in that next game, and Arkansas did indeed cover the spread. Arkansas played pretty well in that game. So Auburn's coming off that. They didn't play that well in that game, so it would give me a little bit of hesitation if I was looking to maybe fade Auburn here. It's not really a spot where I want to come in and try to play either side here. I mean, I guess because Georgia needs the game more and they're getting so many points, that would be the slight lean, would be to taking the points with Georgia, but I don't really want to do it. Georgia's going to try to slow this game down, and Auburn plays a little bit faster than that. So if Auburn's able to speed it up, I mean, that could be a bad situation for Georgia as well. Georgia, again, like I said, they do need some wins, though. I mean, they've lost their last 3 games, all to pretty good teams, ranked teams. I mean, this SEC is a gauntlet, man. Now they're going out on the road. Auburn is a 16-point favorite here. 62% of the tickets on, 65% of the cash. Coming in on the Georgia side, though. Clemson is at SMU. Clemson is pretty secure in their tournament berth at this point, man. So I think SMU may be the side to look at here. And Clemson, after beating Duke, huge win. They didn't have a letdown after that. They beat North Carolina. So, okay, maybe they focus on North Carolina because that's a named team as well. But then what the hell was this? I'm glad I stayed off of this Florida State game last week. I mentioned I liked Florida State in that game. Bad spot for Clemson, I thought. And they just absolutely they wrecked Florida State. They beat them by whatever that is, 26 points. I mean, terrible performance from Florida State at Florida State. I don't know what that was, but now Clemson, second straight road game, and they're having to travel from Florida, from Tallahassee over to Dallas, Texas, I believe is where SMU is. Doesn't look like a great travel spot for Clemson. This is not a familiar venue for Clemson because SMU is new to the ACC, and I think the letdown has to come in at some point. Clemson has to be feeling really high on themselves right now after that run of wins. So I think SMU should be the right side in this game. And as I already pointed out, SMU is coming off that ugly loss to Wake Forest in that game between 2 bubble teams. So SMU, this is going to be a game where they got to step up for it, man, because it's a ranked team coming into their place, and they need wins to bolster their tournament resume as well. They did get a win in their last game, actually, after that Wake Forest game. Excuse me. They played after that. I didn't realize that. Actually, they played Notre Dame on the road, and they got a win there. So kind of a nice – actually, I probably should have realized that because I talked about that game on my show, I think. So nice win there to kind of bounce back, but I think they're absolutely going to be focused for this game against Clemson, man. This game would be SMU or pass. In this game, the line has kind of moved. SMU was a 1-point dog. Now it's a pick 'em. 53% of tickets, 60% of the cash on Clemson. Almost looks a little bit too easy to take the ranked team where it's basically just like a pick the winner situation. So I like SMU in that one. That one has not made my card, though. Kansas. Oh, Kansas. Kansas, I expect them to bounce back in this game. I mean, it's fun for me to laugh at Kansas, though, because I really don't like this Kansas team. Not really a Bill Self fan, but I really despise Hunter Dickinson. I mean, he's been one of the dirtiest players in college basketball since he's been in college basketball, which feels like forever. I mean, I remember him being on Michigan which feels like a century ago at this point. He had that fight. There was a game that was between Michigan and North Carolina, and it was a fight between Hunter Dickinson and Caleb Love, and Dickinson really cheap shot at him. He basically like stepped on him when he was on the ground. I'm like, you got to be kidding me, man. Dickinson, he is a dick, for sure. Just there was no call for that type of shit, man. Crazy that Love and Dickinson are still both playing college basketball, and they're both on different teams now, with Love being at Arizona, Dickinson being at Kansas. But this is a spot where you either lay the points or just stay away. Kansas, everybody's just making fun of them so much for that awful loss at BYU. That was one of their most embarrassing losses, maybe in program history. But, I mean, come on, man. They were out on the road in kind of an unfamiliar venue, second straight game in elevation. I mean, there are reasons why you could expect them to not play well. Of course, you'd never expect them to play this poorly, but when that happens, the team is never as good as they look, never as bad as they look or as good as they look in their worst or best games, you know what I mean? So that was their worst game. This game, you either lay the points or stay away. Kansas is clearly the way better team over Oklahoma State, okay? And coming off of a game where everybody's just blasting this team and making fun of them to such a degree, saying, oh, Kansas is dead. I mean, yeah, I don't think Kansas is a championship contender this year, okay? Ken Pom still has them in the top 25, though, and he has them 6th in defense. Their offense definitely struggles at times, but they are the way better team over Oklahoma State. Oklahoma State, they just won and scored 100 points against UCF, whatever. They're going to try to show up and be focused against Kansas, because Kansas has been so bad recently and getting made fun of in those couple of losses. I actually think you may be actually getting line value on Kansas because of the recency, as crazy as that sounds. The line's down from 15.5 to 14.5 with juice. 81% of tickets, 88% of the cash on Kansas. I would lay the points with Kansas or just not play the game. Nate, what's up, man? Mussolini, yeah, that would be cool if that was my my family's name there, man. We're a bunch of fascists in my family. Baylor is at Colorado. Baylor, they're coming off that pretty tough game against Arizona, man. It was tough for me because I lost that play against I played on Baylor in that game, money line, and they just couldn't quite do it. Lost the game. They tried to kind of hang in there. Now they're going out on the road to an unfamiliar venue, into elevation, into Colorado, off of that big game. Doesn't look like a great spot for Baylor here. So in this game, I would take the points with Colorado or just not play the game. And Baylor is a slow down team. They play really slow, and that's the style that you don't really want to lay points with on the road. But Colorado has been really, really bad this year. I mean, entering the Big 12, tough conference. They just have not played well, but they are coming off a loss against Iowa State. They did win their last home game. Maybe they're going to show up and bounce back from this. I mean, Baylor is a big name team coming to their house, and the spot is pretty weird for Baylor. Not a very good spot for Baylor. So again, it would be Colorado or pass in this game if I was playing it. Baylor is up from 6 to 6 with juice, though. 88% of the tickets, 95% of the cash on them. Not going to play it. We'll see what happens. North Carolina is playing Virginia, which seems like one of those heavyweight ACC games from the last couple of years. No longer is it that. I mean, Virginia really down this year with no Tony Bennett there. But North Carolina, as I keep saying, I think they're better than what you think they are. Virginia, I think, is not really. Virginia has really struggled at times. Actually, I think they've struggled defensively, which not really something you see out of Virginia. North Carolina, they're down from 10.5 to 9.5 here, but that is still the odds makers telling you North Carolina is so much the better team out of these two that they're laying a huge price like this at home. 63% of tickets, 70% of the cash, though, coming in on UNC, and that is the way that I would look in this game. I mean, UNC, again, they are still kind of right there. They can still put themselves back in the tournament discussion, getting some wins here. This game is actually on ESPN too. I think it got moved from ESPN. This game was originally going to be on ESPN because it's North Carolina, Virginia, but it's like, wait a minute. These teams are not doing well this year. We're going to kick you down to ESPN 2. And the crazy thing is they put Auburn on the Auburn-Georgia game, got moved up to the ESPN game, and that's a game with a 16-point favorite. So, I don't know. This game might actually be more competitive. Who knows? Maybe it won't be. But North Carolina, I mean, they're probably going to show up in that game. I still think North Carolina is going to show you something down the stretch here, man. George Mason at VCU, this is kind of the game we've all been waiting for. This is the big A-10 battle between the teams that are atop the A-10. And you look at these teams' records here and think, oh, this is going to be a really good game. This is going to be a competitive game. Both teams are 21-5 overall. George Mason, 1 conference loss. VCU, 2 conference losses. And then you look at the spread. VCU is a 10-point favorite, even more than 10. So the public is going to look at this and think, like, what is going on with this number? You're giving me 10.5 points with George Mason, and they see George Mason in all the bracketologies. George Mason still kind of, I think, has that mystique around their name from that crazy Final Four run they had like 2 decades ago almost at this point. I remember that when I was in college. Crazy run that year with Jim Larinaga, by the way, who is now, I believe, retired finally. He was old, man. I believe he left Miami. But this is a game where I think it's VCU or pass in this game. I've been preaching it all year. VCU is the better of these 2 teams, and I think they're going to show that they are in this game. They should win this game. If I was going to play this, I would lay the points with VCU. They're up from 10-10 with juice. 53% of the cash on them, but 59% of the tickets on George Mason. To me, it looks like George Mason is going to draw the public action here. They're going to think this number makes no sense and is way too high, but VCU, the odds makers are telling you VCU is that much better than George Mason is. I've been saying it, man. I mean, anything can happen once you get to that conference tournament, but I mean, hopefully, if you want the March Madness, the actual tournament to be as good as possible, you want teams like VCU to get in, man. And VCU is good enough that if they don't win their conference tournament, as long as they don't lose to anybody really bad in that conference tournament, they're going to be in the discussion, potentially even for an at-large bid. So I like VCU in this game, and this would help them out as far as that is concerned as well. Both teams are going to show up, but I think VCU is just the better team, man. So that's my opinion in that game. Let's keep going. Some pretty boring games here. Now we're rolling. We're skipping it. We're skipping a bunch of games here. Let me see here. Little Rock. I was thinking about maybe Little Rock just lost to Lindenwood. That's what I was going to say. So they probably are going to bounce back for this game against Western Illinois after that ugly loss to Lindenwood. I mean, I don't have a whole lot else to say about this, but that's not the game that I actually wanted to talk about. I'm going to talk about Lindenwood once I get to it. Although Western Illinois, now that I'm talking about this game, I'll just reanalyze it. Yeah, they just got blown out by SEMO on the road. It's the second straight road game for them, but SEMO is a really good team as well. I think Little Rock is still the best team in this Ohio Valley Conference. SEMO is probably second. That's Southeast Missouri or Southeast Missouri State. I don't know what the hell you even call them now. Radford, as I mentioned them a little while ago, Radford is coming off that big win over UNC Asheville. I believe they're going to be in a bit of a letdown spot here against Presbyterian, who they already beat by double digits on the road. My opinion would be you look to play Presbyterian in this game, the Blue Hose, the Pantyhose, or you pass. That is literally what their team name is. It's some, I don't even know what it is. It's it does have to do with pantyhose, though. It's some, I think, Scottish leggings or so. I have no idea what it is. Presbyterian did have a couple of big games themselves, though, beating Longwood on the road and then playing pretty close against Winthrop. So I don't know that I'd quite want to do it, but I would still probably look to take the points with Presbyterian or pass here, which I'm passing. But Radford down from 7 to 6.5 on that one. So the money looks like it may be coming in a little bit in agreement with me on Presbyterian. UMass Lowell is at Vermont. I actually think the spot for Vermont is bad in this one. Vermont has finally started playing well and showing themselves to actually be a team that might actually win the American East again here, which I don't want to see it happen really, but they are up there now. They just beat Maine, I believe, or actually I'll look in a second, but Bryant, I think, is still the best team in this conference. It's probably Bryant, Vermont, and Maine, maybe UMass Lowell. I think UMass Lowell is actually underrated at this point, which I'm about to mention. Vermont, they just went on the road and they beat Maine and then they beat Bryant. So they just beat the top two teams in the conference, basically, besides them at the very least. And now they're coming off those two huge wins where they've basically proven themselves. They beat Maine twice in this stretch as well. And now they got UMass Lowell, who they already beat on the road. So it is a little bit of road revenge for UMass Lowell here. So UMass Lowell would be my lean in this game. UMass Lowell, like I said, because of their recent stretch of losses, especially that that awful one to New Hampshire. I mean, they've become a team that looks probably worse than they actually are at this point, which is why I played them against UMBC. Even though that was road revenge for UMBC, it didn't matter. I got an easy win on UMass Lowell the other night in that game. UMass Lowell, they're going to Vermont here. This is a big game. I think it's going to make sense that UMass Lowell will be focused in that game to try to get some road revenge of their own there. Vermont is up from 3.5 with juice to 4.5 here, but I would lean towards taking the points with UMass Lowell. Vermont probably still will show up as well, maybe, because it will be still like their third big game in a row. But those other two games they just played, especially the Bryant win, that really kind of cements them as like, hey, we're still here. So I think they may take a little bit of a step back in this game. That would be my opinion there. What else we got? Let's see. Yeah, Lindenwood, actually, this is a play for me, so of course I'm going to talk about it. I'm laying the points with SEMO, Southeast Missouri State, whatever their name is now. Lindenwood is coming off that upset of Little Rock, who I think are probably the best team in this conference. And yeah, you'd think Lindenwood, well, they're going to come off that, and they're still going to be focused on Southeast Missouri as well, right? Well, I don't know about that because that was a huge win against Little Rock. It's now a second straight road game. They actually have no home games left this season. 2 straight home games. It's going to be difficult, man, to come off the game against Little Rock, and that was a win in overtime as an 8.5-point dog. Huge win for this Lindenwood team that's really not a very good team at all. And now they're going to face SEMO, who is certainly the better team. But what makes this even better is that SEMO lost the first game to Lindenwood. So SEMO only has 4 losses this year, and they've avenged the other ones. They lost to Little Rock and then beat them in that road revenge spot. They lost to Moorhead, somehow losing those games at home too, which is crazy. Got the road revenge in ridiculous fashion as well, blowing out Moorhead, who's really just falling apart. And they lost to Tennessee Martin on the road, and then they beat them at home. So they have only one unavenged loss this season, and it is to Lindenwood. So I think because of that, they're going to be focused on this. And they're just kind of on a roll right now. They've won a bunch of games in a row, and this is their final home game. So even though, yeah, they have SIU Edwardsville up next, which is a pretty big game because they're right behind them in the standings, I don't think they overlook Lindenwood because Lindenwood beat them. This is going to be in-season revenge. SEMO is the way better team. Lindenwood is in a letdown spot, really, coming off that ridiculous performance, and it's going to be senior day for SEMO. So, again, you got to, once you get to the end of conference play here, end of the season, you got to start looking at, is this team playing their final home game? Because a lot of times it tends to be a little bit of an extra motivator where you celebrate your seniors, the crowd, you get more of a crowd usually because it's their last chance to catch a game. It tends to be a bigger thing. You celebrate the seniors. You want to send them off right in most cases. So I think that's going to be the case with SEMO here in this one. SEMO's down from 10.5 to 9.5. I don't really understand that. I don't agree with that move. Ken Bum, I believe, has them winning this game by double digits. SEMO, like I said, they're definitely the better team. Lindenwood in kind of the bottom, like 40, and they're 19th in luck index. And they face one of the weakest schedules, of course, because this is a weak conference. But, man, Lindenwood, Ken Bum is telling you they're in the top 20 in luck. So they're one of the most overrated teams, even though they're in the Ohio Valley and they're sitting at only a 500 record. He's telling you they're that bad. Their offense is like a bottom 15 offense in the entire country, even though they play fast, which makes no sense. Their defense is a little bit better than that, but they are the worst team, man. Let me see. Southeast Missouri. I forget what Ken Bum even calls them. Southeast Missouri is like 100 ranking spots higher than they are, which, I mean, of course, they're favored here. They're actually better on both defense and offense. Their tempo is a little bit faster, I believe, so Lindenwood may struggle with that as well. Southeast Missouri is going to actually, what did I say? Does Lindenwood play fast or slow? No, Lindenwood plays fast. What am I saying? I get it all mixed up at this point, man. Usually you don't see a team with their profile play fast, but it's just weird. So Southeast Missouri might actually slow the game down a little bit. And they're only 142nd in luck, which isn't great, and they've faced a weak schedule as well, but they're a lot lower in the luck index than Lindenwood is. So all those things have me on Southeast Missouri, and that one minus the 9.5. That's a play for me. Let's keep going, man. We'll keep it moving. Let's go. What else we got here? Next up, let's talk about another play for me. This is a sandwich spot. I'm going to take the points with UC Davis, which the line looked like it was going against me in this one too, but we have Northridge up from 3.5 to 4 with juice. 4.5, I think, are still out there. 75% of tickets, 78% of the cash on UC Davis, though. So the cash does look like it's on UC Davis. I don't really expect the public to really be getting involved in this game, but I think this spot is bad for Cal State Northridge, man. They just beat UC Irvine on the road. That is a huge win. They're a 6.5-point underdog. So Northridge is actually not a bad team if they're only a 6.5-point dog at UC Irvine, who is a good team, especially defensively. Although I think UC San Diego has kind of established themselves as the new best team in the Big West, the best in the West. Northridge is right behind them, that's for sure, but that was a big upset win over UC Irvine. Irvine has been the best team in this conference the last couple of years, even though I know they didn't make the tournament last year. Somehow they got picked off and upset by that bad Long Beach team. It was even worse this year. That Long Beach team playing with a coach who was fired and continued to coach for the rest of the season, which gave them a spark in the conference tournament. Absolutely ridiculous. And they actually played decently against Arizona in the actual tournament too. But anyway, back to this. Not only did Cal State Northridge just beat UC Irvine, who do they have up next after UC Davis? Oh, yeah, they got UC San Diego, who's the best team in this conference. So this is a mega sandwich spot between the two biggest teams in the conference. And let's make it even better. This is a second straight road game, and we'll make it even better than that. They already beat UC Davis by double digits at home, so they might overlook them for that reason too. So it's a revenge spot for UC Davis. And they also have Santa Barbara and Riverside and Hawaii all up after this. And those teams, Riverside and UCSB and maybe even Hawaii, you could argue, are all kind of better than UC Davis as well. So basically this game is just surrounded by games that are actually bigger than this UC Davis game. So I like the spot to fade Northridge in this game, man. And I think Ken Baum is telling you this line should be right around where it is. I think he has it at 5. So that's not that much of a disparity. And UC Davis, by the way, let's make this even better. UC Davis, yes, they lost at UC Irvine a while back, which you would expect. But if the public is looking at this, they'll think, oh, this is easy. UC Davis is obviously the worst team, which, yeah, they are. I mean, they're getting points at home, but still. They lost to UC Irvine. Northridge just beat UC Irvine. But what makes this even better than what I already said, which is already pretty good, UC Davis just lost at home as 3.5-point favorites to Cal State Bakersfield, who is a team that's worse than they are. This is an ugly loss, man. This Bakersfield team is not very good. And Davis lost this game. I don't know how they lost it, but they did. They got absolutely massacred on the boards in this game. I don't know how that happened. I mean, yeah, sometimes it's not a good sign, but still, I mean, I'm just playing the spot here. UC Davis is the play in that one. Coming off an ugly loss as well. Skip Ken Baum. Ken Baum, I mean, I like to use it as like a check at the very least. It's worth paying, man. I just re-upped for the new year. Every year, mine is up for renewal every February, of course, because the first time I bought Ken Baum was like in that like heat of the moment, like leading up to March Madness years ago. So now it renews every year late February. It's like, you got to renew, baby. I'm like, all right. He's increased his price, but it's still like, I think it's $25 a year or maybe $30 a year. It's definitely worth it. I mean, that's a pretty cheap price. Best in the West, yeah. Manifest Destiny. The 2024 ballot, yeah. I think I was just my actual name on that ballot, so whatever. UTEP is at Jacksonville State. This is going to be a big game. I mean, both teams are going to show up for this. Jacksonville State's down from 5 to 3. This is two of the better teams in CUSA. 53% of tickets on Jacksonville State, but 70% of the cash coming in UTEP. So the market read is saying UTEP in that game. I don't have too much else to say about that game, but that is what the market is saying. Next up, how about another play? Texas State on the money line, minus 125. I don't know where this line has gone now, though. They're a slight favorite last I saw. They're up from pick'em to 2 now. So I think the money line makes sense in this game. You may still be able to find a decent price money line here. 88% of tickets, 92% of the cash. It looks like the money is all coming in at Texas State. I don't think the public is coming in and playing this game at all. But I think the actual money's coming in at Texas State. And the reason for that is that South Alabama has put themselves atop this conference because they just season swept Arkansas State. And that was a win on the road as an underdog. Huge win for South Alabama. I think Arkansas State's the best team in this conference, in the Sun Belt. I would like to see them do it and make the tournament. They're a fun, fast team. They're fun to watch, man. If you catch any of their games, this is a big win for South Alabama as a big underdog. So the season sweep of Arkansas State, that's huge. Now it's a second straight road game. And before Arkansas State, who did they beat? Oh, yeah, they beat this Texas State team. So this is a quick turnaround revenge spot, and it's a letdown spot. So I like Texas State simply for those reasons. And Texas State, I hate how this ESPN loads so slow, man. I don't know what the fuck it is. Texas State, they lost a bunch of games in a row, man, but they've won games recently. They lost to Arkansas State twice in there, though, so I don't know if I'm really going to blame them for that. But the public, if they look at this, should come in and say, well, wait a minute. Texas State lost twice to Arkansas State. They already lost to South Alabama. South Alabama beat Arkansas State twice, and you're giving me points with South Alabama. It looks so easy to take South Alabama. Texas State had gone on this bad run, like I said, though. So again, it's a misleading spread is what I was saying. So it looks like they're begging you to take the points almost with South Alabama. Texas State had lost 5 games in a row, as I was trying to say. They bounced back, though, and they got a win. Then they lost to the South Alabama team, like I said, only by 5, though. They played pretty well in that game. And then they bounced back from that with a win over at UL Monroe, who is a terrible team, but at least they got a win. So winning 2 out of the last 3 games, even though they were both wins against UL Monroe, I think that's good. To give Texas State a little bit of momentum here. This is going to be a big game for them. It's a bigger game for them than it is for South Alabama, in my opinion. So I like it for all those reasons. But then if we look at Ken Palm, yeah, of course he's going to have South Alabama as the better team. But he's got Texas State way down in the luck index at 293. So he's telling you they're better than they look. They're also sitting at 500. So a lot of times when a team is at 500, and they're one game below 500 in conference, a lot of times when you see that, the team steps it up a little bit for that reason too. It's a little bit of an extra driving force. And South Alabama, yes, they're higher than Texas State is here in Ken Palm's rankings. Of course they are, but South Alabama, they like to play really, really slow. Texas State does play slow, but not as slow. Both teams are a little bit low in luck index. Yes, South Alabama's top 100 in defense. They're bottom 200 in offense at the very least. Let me see. So Texas State, you're getting the better offense with Texas State, although the worst defense. Usually I know I like to look to the better defense, but in this spot, I like Texas State, and maybe they'll actually be able to play a little bit faster because South Alabama likes to play really slow. So if Texas State is able to maybe play a little bit faster, even though they are a slow team as well, and get some of that scoring going, I think that they maybe should be able to win this game in what is a bad spot for South Alabama. So, and my last name, wait, what does that mean? What does that mean? I don't even know. My last name, it was in North Carolina's, I was on North Carolina's ballot. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, it was Toad and then my last name. That's right. I don't know. What's not bad? I'm not sure, but yeah. ESPN, yeah, I'm sure they're all DEI, man. ESPN, by the way, if you go to the, watch ESPN, the ESPN Plus, where they have so many college basketball games that you can watch on ESPN Plus now, it's awesome, and I do have it, but they list the women's games first. It's that DEI shit, man. It's like, who the fuck is going in here to watch these women's games? If you catch any moment of these women's college basketball games, they are pathetic. It is such bad basketball. They're airballing shots. It's turning the ball over all over the place. It is disgusting. It's like watching a bunch of retarded people play basketball, which actually basically it is. Now I'm going to get my channel nuked, but the men's game is so much better, dude. Florida's at LSU. Florida's laying only 10 in this game, or maybe even less than 10, which you kind of think they'd be laying more points than this. I don't know, man. It's not really a spot where I'd want to fade Florida, though. I mean, they're on a nice run right now, but it's not really a situation where this game is really sandwiched in between any big games or anything. So I don't know. LSU, they're going to show up for a game where Florida's coming into their house, and they've won a couple of games in a row, which is good to give them a little bit of momentum after they were playing really bad. So maybe they do have a little bit of momentum for that reason. Maybe Florida will come in and kind of take their foot off the gas. I mean, the market read does make it look like Florida's a very public road favorite, and that LSU would be the right side. I mean, I won't disagree with it, but I certainly see no reason to actually put my money on it. Florida, 92% of tickets and only 57% of the cash, down from 10.5 to 9 with juice. So, yeah, pretty strong market indicators on taking the points with LSU, but I won't be doing it. Number 17, Kentucky, and number 4, Alabama is the ESPN game at 6 p.m. My first game is about to tip off, by the way. I hate this. No, as I'm almost spilling my water here, but I hate this. My show here goes so long, and then I wind up not being able to like post it on Twitter, but hopefully people are watching my show and getting that first, that early play for me by watching the show. Hey, maybe it'll convince people to watch the show more. I don't know. Hopefully it'll be a win. They definitely try to push women's sports. Oh, 25 a year, yeah, for Ken Palm. It's a lot of good math and analysis there. It's definitely worth it. It's a cheap price. It's worth it to support a fellow autist, man. That guy is a massive autist. He's a college basketball stat nerd, pretty much. Ken Pomeroy is his name. But yeah, I mean, I think it's worth supporting him. He puts in the work. He's done it for so long. His site is still the best. You got him, Bart Torvik, and Evan Maya. I think Bart Torvik is the second best. I do like those sites. Anyway, number 17, Kentucky. Number 4, Alabama. This is one of the big games of the day. It's on ESPN. Alabama's coming off 2 losses. I mean, we're not going to blame them for losing to Auburn. I mean, that was a huge game. Auburn, very good. Then they went on the road, and they did real bad against Missouri. This Alabama defense is definitely allowing points, man. I took Missouri in that game. I had Missouri on the money line. That was a play for me. I gave it out on the show. Alabama, again, they were coming off that huge game against Auburn where they really kind of hung in that game. So I thought it was a bad hangover spot, a bad travel spot. Missouri was able to get that win. Big win for Missouri. Now Alabama's coming off of that, and it may be a spot where they kind of bounce back because that loss was so ugly. But I have some hesitations because this is a revenge spot. It's a road revenge spot for Kentucky. So Kentucky is going to show up in this game as well. So I can't play either side in this game, even though you may actually get a little bit of value on Alabama here because Alabama looked really bad in that last game and because they lost to Auburn, and everybody's kind of saying that Auburn totally handled them, which, yeah, Auburn had the lead all game, but still. I mean, yes, I do think Auburn's the better team over Alabama, so I just think Alabama, their defensive woes are just going to be what kind of does them in, man. But in this spot, yeah, it does look like it's a bounce-back spot and maybe a spot where you kind of get some value on Alabama because they didn't look good in those last couple of games. But it's not like Kentucky's not going to show up for this. This is a huge game for them as well. Like I said, it's also road revenge to kind of add to it. They just beat Vandy to kind of get back on track. So it's not a spot where I necessarily see a reason to fade Kentucky. Kentucky, though, they've been without, I forget the guy's name, their point guard. I haven't even mentioned this on my show. I've just been playing the spots and stuff. But Kentucky's point guard has been out for like a long time now. He's missed a bunch of games, which is Lamont Butler. He's been out for a long time. So they've been playing without him. And they've been playing pretty admirably without him, to be honest. But they're going to need him back if they really want to like try to make a run at this thing. I mean, Kentucky, again, I don't think they have a good defense either, though. Alabama's definitely the better of these two teams. Both of these teams like to score, play fast. They both don't play very good defense. Alabama is a little bit better defensively this year than they were last year. At the very least, Nate Oates, I think, kind of realized that he had to shore that up. Kentucky will be playing without their point guard, like I said. But again, that's been the case for a long time. Butler there. They're going to need him back eventually. Alabama, and maybe he will be back eventually. Hopefully he's back for the tournament, so you at least get to see him play. Alabama up from 10 to 11.5. 62% of tickets, 81% of the cash. So again, I mean, the market read would kind of be the clincher for me here, and I would lean to Alabama in this game, but I'm not going to play it. I mean, road revenge, I think, is a lesser motivator, especially when you know Kentucky is going to show up for this game anyway. But I do think Alabama is going to be angry off of that loss, man. So I do think Alabama will show up in this game. They're the better team, and if they show up, they should be able to do this. Should be a ridiculously high-scoring game, too. This total is insane. Up from 180 with juice to the under, up to 180 with juice to the over. I agree with the over in this game, too, even though Kentucky's without their point guard there. Both defenses just aren't as good as the offenses. Both teams like to play really fast, so you got to expect a fast game here where the defenses don't really do a whole lot. So I lean to Alabama and the over in this game. And again, when you see a total that's that high, it almost looks difficult to take the over. 80% of tickets, 86% of the cash on the over. But when it's that high, that's the odds makers telling you, we think this is going to be a crazy high-scoring game. And I agree with that as well. I think if you want to play this game, I think play the over and sit back and enjoy the game, man, it was what my opinion would be here. But I do also slightly lean to Alabama in that game, just because I think it is the bounce back spot. And I think Alabama, you may be getting a little bit of value on them here. And I think the public may be kind of looking at this and thinking, oh, this is a matchup between two highly ranked teams. Alabama's looked pretty vulnerable the last couple of games. You're giving me all these points with Kentucky. I know that name. I want to take the points with Kentucky. Public seems to maybe have that kind of sentiment as more of the cash is coming in on Alabama than the ticket percentage. So that's what I think there. Watch live. I keep forgetting what I'm saying that you're responding to, man. I'm sorry. I just talk way too much. No, you can't bet women's basketball. That's right. Yeah, there's the glass ceiling there, man. You can't bet it because it pays the 75 cents to the dollar. Yeah, that's a good joke. Yeah, I like that. Edgerrin James' son. Oh, yeah, Jizzle James. He's Edgerrin James' son? Is he really? I mentioned Jizzle James earlier in the show because his name is funny as hell, man. Jizzle. I mean, it's so insane. It's like that's literally what you call semen. Like, it's so ridiculous. Who names their son Jizzle? And I'm assuming it's got to be like a nickname for something, right? I have no idea, but I did not know he was Edgerrin James' son. Edgerrin James, running back for my Indianapolis Colts, baby. Hell yeah. I had no idea that they were related. I mean, James is such a common last name. There's no way that thought would have ever crossed my mind. Okay. Let's keep going, baby. Let's get this done. Boise and Nevada. Here's another play, another money line play. Nevada, money line, -110. That's going to be the play here. The spot for Boise, you can actually probably get Nevada as a dog now. So maybe we could look to do that too. Boise is flipped from 1-point dog to pick them, looking like they're the favorite now. And I don't agree with that move in any way at all. I don't know how the market seems to be disagreeing with me on this. This, I thought, was one of the stronger plays of the day to play on Nevada here. I don't know what's going on in the market. Boise, 54% of the cash, 57% of tickets, though, on the side of Nevada. Again, obviously, I do not agree with Boise at all. I think Boise is in a mega sandwich spot. I just played Boise in their last game, and they beat New Mexico. Huge win, beating the team at the top of the conference. I thought New Mexico was in a letdown spot off of beating Utah State. New Mexico had already beaten Boise, so that was a revenge spot for Boise as well. Huge win for Boise in that game. And now, speaking of revenge, they got to go out on the road, and they already beat Nevada by 10 points at home. And who does Boise have next? Oh, yeah, they have Utah State up next, who they lost to Utah State only by 2 points on the road earlier this year. And Utah State is second in the conference. It has been near the top of the conference all year. So this is a sandwich spot and a revenge spot, man. I don't know if Boise State is going to have total focus on this. They got to go to Reno. Reno's a difficult place to play, even though I know Boise does play there every year. But still, these Mountain West, as I keep saying, a lot of these Mountain West home advantages tend to be fairly strong. For all those reasons, I think it's a terrible spot for Boise. I like Nevada, and both of these teams do play slow, so there's no, there isn't really going to be any pacing mismatch here. Nevada just lost on the road to Colorado State, and now they're coming back home where they won their last home game. They've been pretty decent at home, and their only home losses were to San Diego State, who's also one of the best teams in the conference, New Mexico. Wait, did they lose to New Mexico? No, or did they not play? No, they didn't play them at home yet. They lost to them on the road. Utah State by 5, and then Colorado State by 2. So they've lost. All of their home losses have been to the other top 3 teams in the conference, basically. So besides New Mexico, I should say, because they haven't played them at home yet. So their 3 losses are to all teams that are better than Boise, let's say. Even though, Boise is right behind those teams. Well, maybe Boise is actually better than Colorado State, too, but still, whatever. Nevada, their home losses have been to teams that are better. And, yes, Boise is better than they are, too, but this is a spot where I think Nevada, you're going to see them play well at home here. They're coming off a loss. I think it's a good spot to play Nevada here. That's what I'm going to do. And then we got in Ken Baum, he's got Boise pretty good. They're 49th, but he has Nevada not really that far behind. I don't think it's 74th, so And he has both of them in the top 100 in both offense and defense. Although he does have Boise better on both sides of the ball, sure. I mean, they are. Both teams play slow. Nevada plays ultra slow. And he has Nevada lower in the luck index at 328th, Boise at 266. So Nevada, he has them as underperforming right now. So basically, they're better than they look, man. And Boise, they're better than they look as well, but a little bit less so than Nevada. So for all those reasons, but it's mostly because of the situation, Nevada will be the play in that one. Money line, or if you can even get them at +1 or something, that would be how I would look in that game. Akron is at Ohio. This is going to be a good game in the MAC, man, between probably the top two teams in the MAC. Akron's sitting at a 2.5-point road favorite. So the odds makers are telling you this is what we think of Akron. They're good. 57% of the tickets on them, but 62% of the cash coming in on the side of Ohio. I don't necessarily disagree with that, man. I mean, Akron is still undefeated in conference. They're on this long win streak. They might have the country's longest current win streak at this point. I think maybe they already did. Maybe it wasn't even Towson. I mean, Akron hasn't lost since non-conference play. So I think Akron does actually have the longest all year. And yeah, Akron's just kind of rolling along, but this will be revenge, I believe, for Ohio. Akron beat them by double digits at home. So this might be a spot where maybe they got to look out, man, because Ohio, like I said, I think Ohio is actually the second best team up, and we have the 12 o'clock games have started, man. I've got Texas A&M and Tennessee on right now next to me. Feels comforting even. Like I've been saying all year, man, I think Miami, Ohio's overrated. I don't think they're as good as they look at all. Toledo's decent and Ohio is decent. Kent State is actually kind of moving their way up as well. So one of those three teams is the second best team. I'm not sure which one, but Ohio is not that much worse than Akron. And in this case, I think Ohio's really going to step up their game for this one. You might see a good game out of them. So I would lean that way to grabbing the points, but I'm not going to play it. What else we got? William & Mary is at Elon. Let's talk about Elon real quick. William & Mary, I mean, they had a nice bounce back from a couple of losses. They got revenge against Drexel. They beat Hofstra, but Hofstra's really been playing badly. Now they're going to go out on the road and face Elon, who they already beat at home by double digits, and they got UNC Wilmington and Towson up next. Those are huge games, so William & Mary might actually overlook Elon here, man, because they already beat them easily, and they got the two top teams in the conference coming up next, so it may be a look-ahead spot for William & Mary. They're having to go out on the road to Elon, and Elon is pretty much having their best season, I think, as a Division I program, even though I don't expect them to win this conference or anything, but my hesitation here is obvious, as Elon has just beaten UNC Wilmington and Towson. They ended Towson's win streak. Huge win for Elon. So Elon is in a double letdown spot almost after those two huge wins. But are they going to overlook William & Mary, a team that already beat them once, who's right behind those teams? Probably not. The question is, are they going to run out of steam after playing two huge games and having a third huge game in a row? But then again, this is also their final home game. So it's senior day for Elon. So there are a lot of conflicting ways to look at this game, man. So I don't know what I would want to do with this game. Elon's down from 5 to 3.5, but they get 80% of tickets, 99% of the cash. Can't be right, but still, Elon, I don't know, man. I mean, they may be the right way to look in that game, but again, it would be tough to do. Duke is at Illinois on Fox at 8 p.m. Eastern as we get into these night games here. This is a weird one, man. I guess, I don't know if this is just like is this a randomly scheduled game? Is this a makeup game? Is this an ACC Big Ten Challenge? I don't see it being listed as one of those, so I don't understand why we have an out-of-conference game here. I don't get it. This is a neutral site game at Madison Square Garden. Don't really understand it. You do have to pay attention to these neutral site games because I keep thinking every one of these games is at the home team's venue, but that's not the case in every one of these games. But still, this is going to be interesting, man. So Duke is laying a bunch of points here. And I think the line is inflated on Duke, man. They're up from 9 to 9.5, 63% of tickets, 58% of the cash. So Duke is going to be public. I mean, Duke has just been winning a bunch of games. What else can you say? They keep winning. They're playing in the ACC, though, and that's the problem. The ACC is a bad conference, very bad. Illinois is playing in a much tougher conference in the Big Ten, so they've faced a way more difficult schedule. So Duke is actually having to step up in class to play this game, and because Illinois has been playing really badly the last couple of games, and Duke has been winning, and because they're Duke and they're ranked and Illinois is now no longer ranked, you know that you're only getting value on the Illinois side. So if it wasn't obvious already, if I was going to play this game, which I'm not, but I would lean to taking the points with Illinois. I like the Illinois side in this game. Duke, again, they've been playing so many bad teams for so long. I mean, Clemson was the best team they played in this entire stretch, and they lost that game. I think the best team that they've played, if you look at like Ken Baum's rankings, the best teams that they've played besides Illinois, like the teams that are better than Illinois, to find a team on Duke's schedule that's as good or better than Illinois, you have to go all the way back to Auburn. So out of conference play, and yes, I know Duke beat Auburn, and that was Auburn's one loss for a long time. But still, I don't know what to make of that because it's teams are still trying to figure themselves out at that point. These out-of-conference games, they're kind of weird. Duke also lost to Kentucky. They beat Arizona, and they lost to Kansas. So, what can you make of all that? Who knows? So they played, basically those four teams are all, the best teams that they played besides Clemson. And they played all those teams so long ago that it's almost like it was a different season. And they only went 2-2 in those games. So I don't know that I'm really that impressed by that. And again, since then, they've been playing all these weak opponents for months now. They've been facing this weak ACC schedule. They lost to Clemson, who was the best team that they played on that schedule. And now they have to step up in class and face this Illinois team that I think is really being overlooked at this point. Illinois plummeting from the rankings. But again, I really don't think Illinois is nearly as bad as they look. They're coming off those games where they lost to Michigan State because Illinois went completely flat at the end of that game, didn't score for the final 8.5 minutes, and then they were sick for this Wisconsin game. But now I think they're going to be in a bounce-back spot here. This is a huge game for them playing against Duke, and maybe the game isn't as big for Duke, really. Duke, yeah, they still need to continue to win, but I don't think a loss to Illinois is going to hurt them that much if it happens, even though Illinois is unranked. Both teams will show up for sure. I mean, it's a big game on Fox, yeah, so it's not like one team's going to overlook their opponent here, but I just think there's value in playing the Illinois side if you want to look at this game. Illinois has been facing such a more difficult schedule. I mean, Michigan State and Wisconsin, both those teams alone, and UCLA, the last three opponents Illinois has faced are all better than basically Duke's entire schedule for the last 2 months. So it's just crazy how much of a schedule strength disparity there's been in conference play. And yeah, I know Ken Baum has Duke as the number one team in the country, but he's got Illinois as 19. So Illinois is a competitive team. They're better than you think they are. Duke really tries to slow the game down, though, and Illinois tries to really speed it up. So I don't know what team is going to win out tempo-wise here at Madison Square Garden. We may wind up seeing a little bit of both in this game. But Illinois, they're not that bad on either side of the ball, man, and they're actually quite good offensively still. So I expect Illinois to show up in this game. They're way low in Ken Baum's luck index now, 321st in luck index now. So he's telling you that they're definitely better than they appear to be right now. They've been underperforming as far as how talented they are, and they face the sixth toughest schedule in the country, whereas Duke is at 58th. So Duke, because of this weak ACC, man, it's weakening their strength of schedule, man. Duke is low in luck as well. I understand that at 284th, but still, this would be Illinois or pass in this game for me, taking the points there. Edgerin's mom tried to write Edging James. Oh, shit. Yeah, all right. Well, it's Edgerin now. At least it doesn't quite sound like edging. Yeah, Elon. Yeah, you might get impregnated if you bet on Elon, man, or if you get anywhere close to him. That's right. Yeah, I'm definitely an E-thought. You've seen the lewds that I posted. Yeah, the schedule is definitely different. MMA and boxers, yeah, well, different weight classes, but usually you have to be in the same weight class if you're fighting each other, right? Isn't that how it works? I don't know. I'm not a huge fight guy, but I don't know. I mean, sometimes I watch it. Next up, Missouri at Arkansas. Number 15, Missouri. We got to get this done, man. This is an ESPN game at the same time as Duke, Illinois. This is a good game. Missouri, I do think they're in a big letdown spot. They're coming off that huge win over Alabama. So normally, I would be looking to play Arkansas here, right? So why am I not? Well, I'll explain that in a minute. It is also revenge for Arkansas because Missouri beat Arkansas by 18 points at Missouri. So big game for Arkansas for sure. Missouri beating Alabama, I mean, that's a statement win. That was Missouri's biggest win of the season. That was basically like, we're legit. We have arrived. We just beat a top 10 team. We beat Alabama. Not only do we beat them, we scored 110 points against them. So, yeah, this is a mega letdown spot. Normally, I would be almost automatically fading Missouri in a spot like this. The problem is Arkansas just played 2 tough games in a row against Texas A&M and Auburn. And they were 15.5-point underdogs against Auburn. This was when Auburn was coming off the game against Alabama. And Arkansas was within 1 point in this game in the final couple minutes of the game. And they were still within 3 in the final minutes. So Arkansas played Auburn almost to the wire in this game. So that's not really the type of spot where I want to try to play Arkansas after that. After they put in such a crazy performance against Auburn. And they're coming off of that. So they could be in a bit of a hangover spot, man. So I don't know what I would want to do with this game. Missouri is down a little bit from a 1.5-point road favorite with juice to 1.5 with less juice. 65% of tickets, 73% of the cash on Arkansas. So the market read, I guess the cash and the money does look like it's coming in on Arkansas a little bit. And I guess the thing that would kind of put this over the top is that Missouri, their stock is probably about as high as it's going to be after that win over Alabama. And Arkansas needs wins, man, for their tournament resume. They really need to get these wins against these ranked teams. So that would kind of push my lean to the Arkansas side a little bit. Slight lean to Arkansas, but that is not a play for me. Pound for pound rankings, yeah, I don't know. I don't quite understand how it all works. All right, San Diego State and Utah State. This is an interesting one. This is a big game. It's going to be on CBS Sports, as a lot of these Mountain West games are. Some of these games are pretty good in the Mountain West. Utah State just absolutely trashed San Jose State by almost 50 points. So it's like, would I really want to play Utah State after they did that? Not really. And they already beat San Diego State on the road by 1. So this is a little bit of road revenge now. So that would kind of have me looking San Diego State's way a little bit in this game. San Diego State, we'll see what they do in this game, man. San Diego State is kind of moving back up in the rankings here. San Diego State kind of needs the game a little bit more because they're more on the bubble than Utah State is. Utah State's tournament hopes are a little bit more secure than San Diego State's. San Diego State coming off a few wins in a row, so they do have a little bit of momentum. Yeah, I know they have New Mexico up next, so they're not going to overlook Utah State on the road. So I would lean to taking the points of San Diego State in this one, but this is not a play for me. Utah State up from 5.5 to 6. 50% of the cash on them, though, and 65% of tickets on San Diego State. I don't quite get that. Maybe it's like the public recognizes the San Diego State name and says, hey, I want to take the points with this team that was in the Final Four in the championship game a couple of years ago. So that would be the wrong way to look at it. But I think even though the market read looks against it, the scheduling spot would have me slightly leaning to San Diego State in that one. And then, wow, there's so many fucking games, man. This is crazy. St. Mary's and Gonzaga. This is a huge game. This is on ESPN2. I would lean to Gonzaga if I was going to play this game. This is a revenge spot for Gonzaga. Both teams are going to show up in this game. Gonzaga lost at St. Mary's, and we know the deal already, man. This is the case over and over again. St. Mary's, they play really good defense. They're really slow. Gonzaga plays really good offense, and they're really fast. So that's the difference. So the home team, I think, can tend to win out as far as that pacing is concerned. That would be Gonzaga here. They did already lose at St. Mary's. So I think they're going to want this game a little bit more. And Gonzaga, I'm going to say they might be the most underrated team in college basketball, man. I mean, they're a top 10 offensive team, according to KenPom, a top 10 overall team. 39th in defense isn't that great, but that's kind of what you get from Gonzaga. And that's actually not even bad compared to some of the other defensive rankings that they've had in recent years. And they're 343rd in luck. So he has them as the better team over St. Mary's. St. Mary's is the better defensive team, like I said. Gonzaga is the better offensive team. Gonzaga is the better team, and that's why you see Gonzaga being a favorite here, which I think Gonzaga at some point won't be under the radar anymore, but I would lean to them in this game. They're up from 6 to 6.5, but they do have 68% of tickets and only 61% of the cash, so surprising to me that Gonzaga would be public here because everybody sees St. Mary's has the better record. They already beat Gonzaga once, so why wouldn't you want to take the points with St. Mary's? So I don't know why we're seeing that as far as the public is concerned. I like I like Gonzaga in that game if I was going to play it. Cal Baptist and Grand Canyon, I point out because Grand Canyon only has 2 losses in the WAC. One of them was to Utah Valley, and then they beat Utah Valley to get revenge. Who was their other loss to? Oh, yeah, it was to Cal Baptist right after they had that huge revenge whenever Utah Valley. I played Cal Baptist in this game. I thought it was a weird spot for Grand Canyon. Bad spot. Cal Baptist was able to get that win. So now Grand Canyon has another revenge game, and this is their only unavenged loss on the entire season. So I expect Grand Canyon is going to show up for this one. Cal Baptist isn't really as bad as they look, but this is a revenge spot. Grand Canyon is better than Cal Baptist. I believe they're better than Utah Valley as well. Cal Baptist really just came off of an escape, though, as 11.5-point favorites against Utah Tech, who almost beat them on their own floor. So Cal Baptist may have been looking ahead to this game against Grand Canyon. So for that reason, I kind of will just stay away from this. But Grand Canyon, if both teams show up, I would expect Grand Canyon to be able to get this done. They are up from 9.5 to 10.5 now, but 99% of tickets, only 83% of the cash. So it looks like they are public, but I don't know about that, man. I don't know. So I think my lean would be to that revenge spot. Because like I said, when a team has only one unavenged loss, it tends to be an extra motivator there. Omaha in the Summit. This is the one spot where I might actually look to the Omaha side here. I mean, they came off those 2 losses on the road where both teams got revenge against them, South Dakota State and St. Thomas, which, by the way, St. Thomas is actually a guy's name in college basketball. I forget what team he's on, but there's some player named St. Thomas on one of the teams. His first name is Saint. I'm like, oh, my God, give me a break. It would be even more hilarious if he was on St. Thomas. I would love that so much. He's not, though. I forget which team he's on. Omaha, yeah, I mean, they just finished 3 straight road games. They actually beat Kansas City in what I thought was going to be a bad spot for them. Now they're returning home to face South Dakota. And by the way, South Dakota is the only team that has delivered them a conference loss that they have not beaten. So this is basically their only conference unavenged loss. And it was Omaha's first loss. They were undefeated in conference until they lost to the South Dakota team. So I think they will be focused on South Dakota in this spot for those reasons. So I actually like Omaha in this one. South Dakota is coming off beating St. Thomas. That's a big win for them. 2 big games in a row. Playing South Dakota State really close and then St. Thomas getting a win there. Now they're going out on the road to face Omaha, who they did beat, even though, yeah, it's a big game still because Omaha's still atop the conference, but still, I don't know, man. And then they do have a revenge spot against North Dakota State, who totally embarrassed them on their own floor, and that's up after this Omaha game, so that may even draw their attention a little bit, man. So if I was going to play this game, I would play Omaha in this game, even though I know how overrated they are. This is actually a spot where it might make sense to do it, but they're down from 4.5 with juice to 4. 59% of tickets on them, 69% of the cash on South Dakota. So the market read looks like it's in disagreement with me on that one on South Dakota. We'll see what happens. Texas is at South Carolina. I don't love the spot that Texas is in. I mean, they just won from me in their last game, a win over Kentucky. Kentucky was in a bad spot. Texas does have a big revenge game up next against Arkansas because Arkansas beat Texas on their own floor when Texas was a big favorite, and I thought that was a bad spot for Arkansas, and I played Texas in that game, and it still didn't happen. So this looks like a sandwich spot for Texas to me. They're going out on the road to face South Carolina. South Carolina, they don't even have a win in conference, man. They've just been playing awful basketball. They're returning home here. At least they've been a bit better at home. They've been pretty competitive against some decent teams on this home floor at the very least. They may be able to hang in this game against Texas, but I think the line is pretty short in this game. But then again, Texas, they're a bubble team as well, so they can't really afford to lose to South Carolina. So I would slightly lean to South Carolina, but Texas does need wins for their tournament resume. So I'll stay off the game and just have a slight lean to South Carolina. Texas up from 2 with juice to 2.5. 55% of tickets on them, but 50% of the cash evenly split. And this line is so low, it almost looks too easy to take Texas in this game. And that is not the way that I would lean in that game. SIU Edwardsville, I think, is in a bad spot as well in the Ohio Valley. They have SEMO up next, so it could be a bit of a look-ahead spot. SEMO already beat them once, so that's revenge. They did just beat Moorhead on the road, which Moorhead, I know they've fallen apart completely, but Moorhead is still a big-name team in this conference. That's still a big road win. And they also have Little Rock after SEMO to finish the season in their final home games. They have all bigger games up next, and they already beat Southern Indiana once at home, so it's also revenge for Southern Indiana and a second straight road game. Southern Indiana, pretty bad team, though. I don't want to put my money on them, but I would lean to them in this game if I was going to play it. Edwardsville is down from 5-4 with juice, 88% of tickets, 93% of the cash on them, but I would agree with the Southern Indiana side if I was going to play that one. And then we do have the last game I'll talk about here. BYU is at Arizona. Arizona's ranked. BYU, they're on the bubble. They're a bubble team. They're kind of moving up. They're looking pretty good right now to probably get one of those last tournament bids there. They just smashed Kansas. That's going to go a long way. That's a big win, and now they have to go out on the road to Arizona, which I don't think is a very familiar venue to them, with Arizona being new to this conference, having to start the Arizona leg here, coming off such a satisfying home blowout win over Kansas, man. I just don't think the spot is that good for BYU here. Arizona just beat Baylor on the road. That was a big win, but I don't know, man. To me, it seems like BYU is in the worst spot here to me. So my lean would be to Alabama. It's not a very strong, or to Arizona, excuse me. I keep saying Alabama, Arizona. I lean to Arizona, but there's no way I'm playing this game. They're up from 7 to 7.5. 68% of tickets and only 54% of the cash. So the cash percentage isn't on them, but that's the way I lean. So that's it. I gave out the 7 college basketball plays. The last one was Nevada. Hockey is back in action. I don't even know if I really want to talk about this hockey slate because I don't have any plays here. And coming back off this new all-star format, I don't know what you even can expect in these games, man. I really don't know what to expect because what you want to look for is you want to look for teams that as I said with the NBA all-star break, you want to look to play on teams that went into the all-star break on a really bad note, although most of these teams didn't. None of these teams were really on crazy streaks going into the all-star break, and you want to look to fade teams that went into the all-star break really hot because, again, the all-star break can help you fix things if you were playing badly, but they can also crush your winning momentum if you're winning. So that's the issue with it. But I don't really see any spots that I like here, man. Dallas and New Jersey, that looked like the strongest market read to me. I don't really see a whole lot of a situation here, but New Jersey's up from -103 to -114. So it looks like they are kind of an anti-public home favorite with the money coming in on them. 70% of tickets, 74% of the cash on Dallas right now. But I do lean to New Jersey slightly with kind of the way the market had started to look there. But I don't really have that much reasoning behind that. Anaheim is at Boston, my Boston Bruins. I'm wearing my Bruins hat here. I always talk about the Bruins. Anaheim did go into the break hot, actually, though. They beat Dallas and LA. Huge wins for Anaheim there. And Boston went in, I believe, on a loss, but it was a close loss, to the Rangers and Vegas. So those are big games. So I don't really know that I would consider that to be like a really bad way to go into the All-Star break, even though, they lost those 2 games. They were the good teams, but I would still lean to Boston a little bit here. My Boston Bruins, they're down from -225 to -191, though. So I don't know if that means there's a goaltender change, because I know Swayman played in the Four Nations. Well, he was on the U.S., but of course he didn't play in the final, so he should be well-rested enough that he probably will be playing in this game, so I don't know why the line has moved like that. 71% of tickets, 88% of the cash on Boston, so the cash percentage is there. Carolina-Toronto is maybe the biggest game on the entire slate. Actually, 2 good teams. Carolina up from -110 to -121. 60% of tickets, 82% of the cash. So the market read is on Carolina. I don't disagree with it. The odds makers are telling you Carolina is the better of these 2 teams, and they were not doing well right before the All-Star break. They did get a win over Utah to kind of end that to get into the All-Star break, and I think that's more of a positive than a negative, getting a win to break that loss streak against a bad team. And then Toronto actually ended their win streak and lost to Vancouver going into the All-Star break. So they kind of lost that momentum. So I don't know, man. The market seems to be indicating on Carolina. They may be not getting enough credit because they had that kind of bad loss streak shortly before the All-Star breaks. That's kind of the way I would look there. Montreal and Ottawa, I will say, the other thing you want to look for here is, are these goaltenders going to be rested? Because Montembeault played in the Four Nations, I believe, from Montreal, but he did not play in the final, of course, for Canada there. For Canada, not for Montreal. He was on Canada. Ottawa has Omar. He just came back shortly before the All-Star break, which I thought he hadn't played at all. excuse me, but he did play 2 games before the All-Star break, and I actually think Ottawa lost both of them. So he's kind of still getting his bearings. He did play, I believe, for Sweden in the Four Nations. So you do have 2 goalies who actually played in some of the early moments in the Four Nations, but again, I think their rest is going to be fine coming into this game. They haven't played for a while now, so both goaltenders should be ready for this game. I don't know which way I would even lean in this game, but you do have to take into account all that's going on in this Four Nations. Now, Ottawa's down from -175 to -151, though. 69% of tickets, 63% of the cash, so they look public. The money looks like it is coming in on Montreal. I wouldn't necessarily disagree with it because Ullmark still looks like he's trying to kind of find his bearings here. And then we do have Winnipeg and St. Louis, which this game, I saw that this game was coming up, and I'm like, I want to play Winnipeg here because what is this game? Winnipeg has Connor Hellebuck, who was the top goalie for the U.S. in the Four Nations. St. Louis has Jordan Binnington, who was the top goalie for Canada. So I'm looking at this, and I want to fade Binnington in his first game off of that ridiculous performance because he is just not that good anymore. And he played out of his mind to win the Four Nations final for Canada there. He played well above what he's been playing this year. That was a huge game for him, in my opinion. So I think he's going to have a setback in his first game. So I'm thinking I want to fade St. Louis. And it's even more hilarious that Hellebuck, the losing goalie for the U.S. in the final, is on Winnipeg. So these two teams are actually playing each other in the first game off of that. The problem is neither goalie is playing in this game. It looks like both teams look like they're going with their backup goalies here because both of their starting goalies did play in that Four Nations final, which was 2 days ago. So they're not playing in this game. So very unfortunate because I would play Winnipeg. I'm going to still look to fade Binnington whenever he plays again, which is probably going to be in the next game for St. Louis. But yeah, the money, it looks like Winnipeg is ridiculously public and the money is coming in against them. I'm just not going to touch this game. I'm not touching any of the hockey today. I'm skipping it. Winnipeg down from -140 to -111. 93% of tickets, 99% of the cash on them. I don't know. It's a tough slate to handicap, man, coming out of the All-Star break. So I'll just skip it and I'll stick to having a bunch of basketball plays. And I have 9 basketball plays because we do have NBA going on today. NBA, we have a few games, and I'm on 2 of the 5 games today for the NBA. Jack Hughes was an ass. What was he doing? I don't even remember what he was doing in the Four Nations. I have no idea. Was he, who the hell? I don't even know who the hell he is, man. I don't pay enough attention. I'm mad as well. Fuck Canada. Is Hughes Canada's coach or something? I don't even know. I don't know what was going on there, but a bunch of those guys are being assholes. All right, let's see. I just don't know the players that well in hockey, man. I apologize. Phoenix, Chicago. I have a play in this game, and this is going to be laying the points with Phoenix. I'm going to lay the 5.5. I mean, everybody's talking about how Phoenix is in disarray. I mean, it looks like Durant doesn't want to play, but I don't know about that because Durant, they had him on the bench during some of the key stretches against San Antonio in the last game, but I don't know, man, because Durant was getting really kind of angry, and he was like getting into it with Chris Paul. So that kind of shows me that he might still want to play and try to win these games, man. And I actually think this is a bounce back spot for Phoenix. I think that was a bad performance, man. They came out of the All-Star break. They went into the All-Star break on a bad note. They came out of the All-Star break and they lost to San Antonio. And that was San Antonio without Wemba, which was that, late news that Wemba had the blood clot, the deep vein thrombosis in his shoulder. Terrible. Now, he's not going to be able to play when he's on blood thinners, which, by the way, is what ended my NBA career as well. I'm on blood thinners for my stroke, so I can never play in the NBA again. Very unfortunate. Phoenix, that's an embarrassing loss, though, man, when San Antonio loses their star player. But again, you can explain why that happened, because it was like the injured player theory spot where San Antonio, they lost their star player at the last moment like that. And they stepped up their effort big time in that game. They wanted to win one for him. A lot of times you see that happen. The team really steps up for that first game. And I think that's why they also didn't play well last night, turning right around, having to play again, which I mentioned. I leaned to Detroit in that game, but I didn't love the fact that it was in that weird venue that San Antonio would be more familiar with and whatever. So I just stayed off the game. But Phoenix, embarrassing loss, man. Losing by double digits to San Antonio in that game with no Wemba there. You got to think they're going to be focused and try to bounce back from this. I mean, they're playing pretty poorly right now, but this Chicago team, I think they're playing even worse. They're obviously the worst team because Phoenix is laying points here, but Chicago, I think they're playing like they don't want to be here anymore as well, man. I mean, they lost 5 games in a row, and they came out of the All-Star break, and they did play well, which that was my handicap in that game against the Knicks. I liked Chicago in that game because the Knicks had the Celtics up next, and Chicago had gone into the All-Star break on a very bad note, losing a bunch of games in a row. And Chicago, they put in a huge effort as double-digit underdogs. This was 2 nights ago, and they took the Knicks into overtime, almost won the game against the Knicks. And now coming off of that, I don't like the spot for Chicago. I think this is a major hangover spot here. I mean, Chicago, they're playing like they don't want to be here, and the games they're going to step up for games like that, like a big game against a big-name team like that, and they put in a huge effort in that game, full effort, whereas Phoenix is coming off that embarrassing loss. So I like Phoenix for all those reasons here. You talk about Phoenix being in disarray. Chicago, they look like they're kind of packing it in for the season as well, man. Plus, they have Josh Giddey, right, who's a pedophile. So I believe that was part of that trade with did Caruso wind up going to OKC? I don't even know where Caruso is now, but Giddey, yeah, he got OKC unloaded that guy. Now he's on a losing team, which I enjoy. I actually don't even know if that stuff is true. I mean, it might just be a lie. Who knows? It's just fun to call him that, though. Although it sucks, though, because Birdman, Chris Anderson, if you remember that guy, his reputation got ruined because people wound up saying that he was a pedophile, and that's not what happened at all. What happened was that he got catfished. It's a crazy story that nobody even really knows about. This woman, or supposed woman, who was she was supposedly in her 20s, talking to him online, and then I think he wound up trying to meet her, and it turned out that she was this crazy, teenage Canadian chick who was a serial catfish, and then everybody took that to be Chris Anderson as a pedophile, and that wasn't the story at all. He's stupid for not realizing it was a catfish, but that's his biggest crime. So free Birdman, man. Free Chris Anderson. Those rumors are not true. I just told you exactly what happened with him. But anyway, Chicago's in a bad spot. Phoenix is in a good spot. Chicago, I mean, they're looking like they're packing it in for the season. You can lay 5 with Phoenix now, actually. So that may be what we'll do here. They're just sitting at a 5-point favorite. 52% of the cash on them. 51% of the tickets on the Bulls. I like Phoenix in that one. LA and Denver is the one big game, which I don't have a play on. But the spot looks a little difficult to me for the Lakers, man. I mean, second straight road game. They just won at Portland, which was 2 nights ago, I believe. Chicago and Phoenix, by the way, both played 2 nights ago as well. Luka still hasn't really shown up in the box score that much. And now LA's having to go on the road again. I mean, second straight road game out into elevation to face this Denver team. And we know this Denver team has really had the Lakers' number, man. This Denver team has won most of their recent games against LA. We know they beat them in that almost a sweep, I think, of a conference finals series a couple of years ago. Denver has won most of their recent games against the Lakers. Denver, they beat Charlotte in their last game. Who cares? That was their win out of the All-Star break, which continued Denver's momentum. This Denver team, I mean, they definitely have momentum right now, even though they're beating up on some not very good teams. Still, this Denver team is on a roll right now. This game, for me, they're just staying at home. I think the travel spot's weird. LA still might, be trying to get Luka involved there and be trying to fix their chemistry. So I would only look to the Nuggets in this game, but I'm not going to play it. They're up from 5 to 6.5, 52% of the tickets, but 61% of the cash on the Lakers, even though the line is moved up on the Nuggets. You also got to look at injury reports, but whatever. I'm not playing the game. The other game I am on is Utah plus 7.5, which I think this was 8 at some points. Maybe it's 8 right now. We'll see what we can get on this. Rockets down from 8.5 to 8. 53% of tickets, 76% of the cash on the Jazz. So the money is coming in on the Jazz. I'm knocking that line down, and I agree with the Jazz in this one. Houston, and both teams are on back-to-backs, I think, but I think the Houston spot is way worse. I had Houston last night. They got that big revenge win over Minnesota coming out of the All-Star break. Huge win last night for Houston. Big performance. Now they're going out on the road with no time off to face this bad Jazz team for 1 game in elevation, and they got Milwaukee up next shortly after that, which is a much bigger game. So I think Houston could easily overlook Utah in a spot like this. Houston is still without Fred VanVleet, who is their point guard there. He'll be back probably in that game against Milwaukee. It looks like that's when he's scheduled to come back at the very least, or estimated right now, which was something I didn't mention last night. Houston's been without him for a while, though, so they've kind of learned to sort of play without him, even though, yeah, being without him hurts. His first game back, they're going to have to work him back in, and there might be some chemistry issues there, too. We'll see, but that's really the main injury concern for Houston. But again, going into elevation on a back-to-back like this, not that easy. Utah is coming off getting just wrecked by Oklahoma City. I mean, what can you expect? Oklahoma City's a way better team, and that was last night as well. Utah, first game out of the All-Star break, didn't have a good game against Oklahoma City. They're on a back-to-back too, but they're just staying at home, so I think it's a much better spot for Utah. They're getting a ton of points at home, coming off a bad loss, or just an ugly loss, really, even though it was to a good team, whereas Houston coming off a big win over a pretty good team. So Utah is the play there. That's going to do it for me, man. Thanks, everybody, for hanging out. Always a long show on Saturday, which I kind of hate, but, oh, he's the center for the Devils. Yeah, okay. Oh, he played for USA, didn't do anything. Yeah, I mean, that kind of sucks. Manti Te'o. Yeah, Manti Te'o got catfished by a trans person who is actually, like, related to some former Samoan NFL player. I forget which one, but that story is insane, too. I don't know how Te'o was that stupid, man. I mean, I don't mind Te'o as a person, like watching the 30 for 30 on that or whatever it was, but still, or the Untold, whatever. I think it was Untold, that series, but I don't know, man. I don't know how he could be that stupid. An NBA player talking to women online, yeah, who knows? Birdman, I mean, he's famous. He has a mohawk and a bunch of tats. You know that he peacocks all over the place. He's Birdman. He is a peacock. He can easily get women in real life. I don't know. Thank you, Charles. I don't love the long shows because I got to get out of here and do stuff for the day. But peace out, guys. My plays today one more time. Cincinnati, which is already in play right now, and I don't even know what's happening in the game. -7. Oklahoma +4 coming up shortly. I think Penn State +3.5. All of these in college basketball. Southeast Missouri State -9.5. UC Davis +4.5. Texas State money line -125. Nevada money line -110, or maybe you can get +1 on that. Phoenix Suns either -5 or -5.5 in the NBA, and Utah Jazz +7.5 or +8. That's going to do it. Tower Gang Toad on Twitter. Go check out my stream last night where I played Uke for hours, basically on, I don't remember the name of the stream, but it's Ass Butt Stream. You can go find him and figure out what that was. I retweeted it as well, so find that there. Tower Gang Toad on Twitter. That was a fun show as well. And Tower Gang Podcast, patreon.com/Tower Gang. You get live pre-show, post-show, or actually we stopped doing the post-show. I don't know. You get bonus content at the very least. So you get an extra, like, half show or something now, basically, is what we're doing. Something like that. There's a paywalled half show. I don't know what people thought about it this past week, but we'll see. We'll see what happens. Thanks, guys, for hanging out. That's going to do it. Peace. Yes, the Utah Jizz. That's right. Peace out, guys.